Welcome to Filthy Casuals Review, a game where two bumbling magic morons try to match wits with the best brains Limited has to offer, and Marshall Sutcliffe. Just kidding, love you, Marshall. Here's how it works. When a new Magic set comes out, pro player Luis Scott-Vargas and self-proclaimed food and beverage director Marshall Sutcliffe grade all of the commons and uncommons from the set on their excellent podcast, Limited Resources. Kenny and Seth have each done a blind review of the cards on their own. The goal? Get as close as possible to the grades the pros gave them. I'll let LSV explain the grading system.
Ace.
These are your bombs, your game winners, just the best cards in the set. They tend to be really efficient, good in many situations, or just capable of ending a game by themselves.
B's.
B's are cards that actively pull you towards their colors. These are headliners for a set, go-to cards, and reasons to be in a particular color, clan, or guild.
C's.
C's are playable. Most cards fall into this category. They're fairly interchangeable, and you're going to end up with a bunch in your deck. C's don't mean bad. C's are just kind of your average card.
D's.
D's are sometimes playable, but you'd prefer not to run them. These are the cards that, when you've got these in your deck, you kind of wince a little. You're actively unhappy that you have to play them.
F's.
And then F's are basically unplayable.
Seth and Kenny will get points based on how far off they are from the professional grades. It's a lot like golf. There's a lot of cursing and the low score wins. To spice it up, the loser of our little game will have to buy a booster box of the new set for the winner. Stick around till the end of the show to see who won. But for now, let's talk about some of the truly awful decisions Kenny and Seth made, and maybe even some of the valuable lessons learned, as Filthy Casuals review...
Streets of New Capenna.
Hello, welcome to Filthy Casuals review here on Red Mage, Blue Mage. I am joined, as always for these, with Seth, all the way from San Antone. Seth, welcome to the show.
Howdy, partner.
I love the cowboy entry.
Oh, I have to. It's always down in Texas like this. It's actually kind of surprising. Like you always hear like the Cowboys and everything. Now, there definitely are. Amelia and I, we've gone to what is it called? I think it's just called Cowboy Dance Hall. I think like you clearly know what it is.
Yeah.
And so she loves to dance. She was in color guard in high school and just kind of kept up any kind of dance classes that she had. And what's really nice is they actually have some classes that they do on Friday night. So for like an hour, you get to learn like Texas two-step, triple two-step, some sort of variation of a two-step.
It has to be two-step.
Exactly. I mean, it's been fun. I've never danced in my life, like the classic like high school, like you're swaying back and forth.
Oh yeah,
it's
sure.
just not dancing. But to actually get a little bit of, it's not even choreographed. Like that's the trouble I have with it because I want something that's more like like
prescribed
a waltz or something.
Yeah,
exactly. Where it's like it's very like, oh, you just move however you want. So I'm struggling with that, but it has been a lot of fun trying to learn it and just understand like. How to like incorporate moves into it, and yeah, it's been a good time. But
very nice.
Texas has been a lot of fun. My time down here will be short-lived. We're going to be heading back next week, and we'll be in the Terre Haute area for the next few months.
I'm excited to have you back around here.
Yeah, it'll be good to be back.
There have been many cube updates, and I'm excited to
play it.
Yeah,
I'm excited for that too.
And I'm excited to see you come back with boots and spurs and a cowboy hat.
haven't purchased any of those. I have boots. They're just not cowboy boots. But
okay.
Yeah, it's
okay.
We also traveled to not to get too far off into a tangent, but Lyndon B. Johnson's state park that he has down here. So he just turned his ranch into a state park before he left, I guess. So, but it's actually really cool. But they had all of his Stetson hats and then all of his cowboy boots like on display and all that. And he was very, very much a Texan. So, I mean, all the power to LBJ and all that he did during his time.
I guess so. Collected a lot of hats.
He did. Yeah, very much so.
All right, speaking of gathering up your prized possessions and putting them in a trophy case, we need to talk about awards from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty.
Okay, let's hear it.
Which is especially exciting because, as if you've been listening to the show, you know that Seth actually has dove back in head first into drafting. So I'm excited to hear your additional perspective here on these awards. Okay, so my defeat was very, very easy, not difficult at all, was Life of Toshiro Umezawa.
Okay, yeah.
So this is a saga.
That been good.
Yep. 1 in a black, uncommon. Chapters 1 and 2 for the saga. You choose one, a creature gets +2/+2, a creature gets -1/-1, or you gain 2 life. And then in Chapter 3, it flips into a 2/3 enchantment creature. You can tap, pay 1 life, and add a black mana for instants and sorceries. I gave it a C, LR gave it a B, you gave it a good grade as well. And we both didn't give this the best of grades, but I was much more vocal about this card being just an average playable.
Sure.
And it's kind of emblematic. I was kind of low on the sagas across the board. I just didn't like the idea if I pay 2 mana and then 2 turns later I get a 2/3. Just didn't sound very good. But I think that's actually the opposite way that you want to think about sagas, and why sagas wind up being so good is that actually what you're getting 2 copies of a spell, and then just as an extra huge bonus, you get this awesome token at the end of it. It's just like a huge layer of icing on top of this already great cake.
Yeah, I agree. So with Life of Toshiro, God, one of the best feelings was if you were on the draw and they play a turn 1 toughness, and then the next turn they played another 1 toughness creature, and you're holding a Life of Toshiro, you're like, oh my god, this is it's the best feeling ever.
Yeah,
whenever you have something like that. So
casual 2 mana 3/1.
Yeah, exactly. So that was the ultimate, and that was more earlier in the set, a real nice gotcha. I kind of didn't see that nearly as much at the end, but there was still plenty of opportunities where it was a 2-for-1 or anything like that. So, and I think just overall with the set for Kamigawa, it was all about value. If you could 2-for-1, if you could 3-for-1, that's where you really wanted to be. You wanted to make sure that you squeezed every ounce of mana that you could to be as efficient as possible. If you could gain more value over your opponent, that's how you won in that set.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I didn't see this one as adding so much value, but
Sure.
You say, you can get your 2-for-1 or your 3-for-1. And then in cases where you can't get the creature, getting to push through damage or just gaining life and buying time, and eventually you get a creature out of it. Any combination of these abilities is good.
Well, another thing that I learned too is that a common color theme for ninjutsu and ninjas was black-blue, and if you can ninjutsu back one of these creatures that had flipped, it comes back to your hand, and then you can cast it again as the saga, getting even more value out of it. So that was something I didn't really think about. And I didn't really see that too terribly much, but it's still more value that you could extract out of it. So it's very versatile. Sagas just in general, it's just tough. Whenever you see something so different, new, it's tough to really gauge what's going to happen with it at our level and our elo. But sagas ended up being really good.
Absolutely. And that's a perfect segue into your defeat card, which is also a black saga. It is Okiba Reckoner Raid.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, sorry. I just quickly got on board with that one because I did see how quick it was and how much enablement it had. Kind of going back to what I said there about you can ninjutsu it back, get even more value out of it. Yeah, that was definitely makes sense that's my defeat card.
For sure. It's 1 black mana for a saga. Chapters 1 and 2, it drains your opponent for 1, and then it turns into a 2/2 menace, and vehicles you control have menace. And actually, the observation I wanted to make about this card, and the way that you talked about it at the end of the day, I think this is emblematic of a trap that either one of us can fall into, and we have in the past, both of us, is sometimes a card will have an extra line of text that is so stinky it makes you think the rest of the card is bad. Because you said in your notes on that card, you said, I really hope I'm wrong on this one, but there's just not enough vehicles in this set. Yeah. And the reality is that vehicle line was utterly irrelevant.
It was,
Didn't matter at all. But it could trick you very easily into thinking this is some sort of vehicle build around Lord thing. But it's not at all. It's just pure value.
It's just a good card. Yeah, it just had that upside of the vehicles if you could use it, but
I never saw
really
that
didn't
happen.
I didn't either. It wasn't really needed, even if it didn't have that language in there. I think you're right. If it didn't have that language in there, would I have still given it a D or an F? Because I put that.
On it.
I probably would have been, actually. I wouldn't have played it as a D or an F. Probably would have been like a C- or something like at that point. I thought, oh, okay, it's just, a quick way to just kind of get some damage in there, but it's not doing enough. But yeah, I do think that statement of saying vehicles have menace, well, it's like, well, if this was supposed to be your payoff for it, then that's just not enough. So just kind of negating the fact that it was just a decent card with decent base stats to begin with. So, yeah, that's interesting.
All right, on to the good stuff now, our triumphs.
Yay.
My triumph is Blossom Prancer.
Yeah.
I was the ultimate advocate of it, and it's not like our grades were crazy off. I gave it an A-. Limited Resources gave it a B. This is 3 green for a 4/4 spirit with reach. When it comes into play, you look at the top 5 cards, you can get either a creature or an enchantment, or if you don't want to, or you didn't find anything, you can gain 4 life instead. And I was irate in our set review of Kamigawa. I was just like, this is just insane. This card is so good. And eventually I feel like I was vindicated. LR has an overrated, underrated episode for each set, like in the middle of the set. And LSV about this card said, it's actually impossible to overrate this card because everybody knows it's fantastic. And I'm like,
yeah,
you're goddamn right. And to me, that's an A. If you can't overstate how good it is, that's an A.
Sure. No, it's very true. That card, God, you always love to see it. Anytime I played, and if I, even in pack 2, about mid-pack or something like that, if I clearly was not in any sort of green, and if I saw that, pack 2, pick 3 or something like that.
That's a massive signal.
Yeah, I know. It's a massive signal in itself, and then I'm doing anything I can to, pivot to just, at minimum, just include it.
Yeah.
If not, I'll just say, all right, let's look at green at that point. So, yeah, it was excellent.
It having reach as well really puts it over the top because it's like that's to me what gets it into the A category. It's so stabilizing.
Yeah.
4/4 reach with the potential to gain 4. I did, when I cast it, often use the gain 4 life in situations where I was behind, and it just shuts the door. Your opponent just now can't do anything against it.
Sure. Yeah. No, I agree. I think it was a great card, and yeah, your A- that you had on it was definitely worth it. Probably could have even been a little higher, looking back.
I think you could just call it an A.
Yeah, I think so too. It was definitely a first pickable card over a lot of the rares and mythics that were in there.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right, your triumph. This will probably not be a surprise. This is not, I will say, this is not the 3-mana rock that is so often your triumph card. This time it's Disruption Protocol.
And I don't even remember it.
Well, I will read it out and you'll remember when I say it. This is a counter spell. It's blue for an instant. As an additional cost to cast the spell, tap an untapped artifact you control or pay 1, counters a spell.
Oh, that's right.
So it's it's a cancel where if you have artifacts, it just turns into counterspell.
Yeah.
And you were just making the point straight up counterspell is good. And as the format progressed, LR gave it a D or F, and as it progressed, they're like, oh, this is actually fine. And it's like, wow, yeah, crazy, can't believe it.
If this is, if I remember right, this was my point was if this is a D or an F, then all counter spells are a D or an F, which whenever we get into our actual set review, yeah, I know, but whenever I did it, I'm like, oh, counter D or F, just a straight.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you.
So this was truly this is as good as you're going to get because there were a lot of artifacts in this set. So
totally.
This was as easy as you could. This was as close as you could get to a counterspell. The best thing that we could possibly do. It's even better than a mana leak. And well, I guess that can be argued, but this doesn't have that late game downside of
Right. Late game, this is better.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I'm glad that was my Triumph card. I'm kind of surprised, but not really at the same time. So it was interesting to hear that one.
Yeah, I think you did good there. I am once again giving us a bonus Triumph. Well, I guess I haven't done a bonus Triumph, but this is a shared Triumph as well.
All right.
Vehicles, just as a category. You and I were not into them. I specifically said in our review, I've never been impressed by vehicles.
Sure.
You said in our review that much like in Crimson Vow with Exploit, it's really undersupported in this format.
For sure.
That turned out to be true. Vehicles as a deck just kind of blew. I saw individual mechanics do good things, but I never saw vehicles come together as a deck.
Yeah, I agree. I actually drafted one time a blue-white vehicles deck, and I had like there was a mech card. It's a 4/3. It becomes a copy of whatever. I started out with that card. It was the rare card, like
the Mind Link mech.
Mind Link mech. Yep. And then the next turn, I had like another like vehicle that was like pretty good as well. So I'm like, you know what, like,
let's go for it.
Yeah, let's just see what happens. So I drafted blue white. I had Born to Drive in there. I had all the like supplemental stuff in there, and it did okay just because of synergy alone. But if you're going at a higher level whatsoever, this thing just felt like it would fall apart. It just was not fun. Like, I mean, I guess not fun wouldn't be the right way, but it's just like not able to really like push through everything, and it just kind of dirtled a little bit. And that was even probably one of the more synergistic versions of it. So, I was watching Nummy play quite a bit as well, just to kind of gain some insights on what he's like and what he's playing. So I don't have to pay and figure it out myself.
Of course, yeah.
But anytime he played blue-white, it was just blue-white good stuff. It wasn't like having the vehicles or anything like that. He just drafted good blue and white cards, and he won that way, not because of the vehicles.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that was a strength of the format overall, is that not all of the mechanics worked out. So, like, vehicles wasn't that good. The red-white attack alone mechanic wasn't that good. Modified wasn't that good. But that didn't mean you couldn't draft those color pairs. Like, you could still build a good deck with them. And actually, the blue-white uncommon vehicle, the build-around vehicle, was actually okay. But it just wasn't... You weren't going turbo vehicles.
Yeah, no.
All right, and finally, the wild card, the one that everybody was wrong about. Do you care to take a guess on this one?
I'm looking real quickly through my the list and just like what we rated kind of low or high, and just see like what the opposite was. The only one that I would guess, and I don't think this will be it, but I'm gonna say Bamboo Grove Archer.
That's actually a really good guess.
We were all pretty low on that, so I was looking. I gave that a C minus. LR gave this a D or an F. You gave this a C, so you had the highest grade. That thing, it kind of slaps. Actually, it just held everybody like at bay. Like, had reach 3/3 for 2. Like, who cares that it had Defender? It was an enchantment. It had a lot of enablements, and it ended up being a pretty damn good card.
That's actually a really good nomination. I'll say that is a wild card as well.
Okay, sounds good.
The one that I put down was Imperial Oath.
Oh, yes. Absolutely. That card was awesome.
Yeah, 5 and a white sorcery, make 3 2/2 white samurai with creature tokens with vigilance, and you scry 3. You gave it a D or F, they gave it a D or F. I hedged and gave it a C minus, which is still not a very good grade. This was actually just the best common, period, end of statement in the entire format, which is crazy pants.
I don't think you could ever have enough Imperialos in your deck.
So it was very interesting. I was listening to the Sunset show from LR about Kamigawa, and they were talking according to the data in 17 lands, and they said it's the top performing common. Having 2 is better than having 1. Having 3 is better than having 2. Having 4 is better than having 3. Having 5 is better than having 4. And we don't actually know about 6, because when are you ever getting 6 of these in a deck?
Well, that's fair. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Numi would actually joke too. He's like, "Oh, it's like if you draft one of these, that's an automatic 2 wins. And it's like, and you just add every time. So there was one time he had 3. He's like, oh, automatic 6 wins right there. So it's just like, it's just that powerful. Which
is wild. I mean, to me, it makes some amount of sense because I compared this to another card from long, long ago. Do you remember Captain of the Watch?
Yeah, absolutely.
So this was a rare from, I think, M10, and it was a 2/2 soldier that made a bunch, like 3 other soldiers, and they all had vigilance.
Yep.
This is very close to that at
It's
common.
similar.
And giving you Scry 3 in the late game makes it so that you have this huge stabilizing presence, and your next 2 turns are set up.
Yep.
So it just is actually absurd.
It is. That was such a good card. Yeah, it's 6 mana. You wouldn't have thought that it would make as much of an impact as it did. But this was kind of a grindy set. I get
yes.
The battlefield just got so mucked up that you just kind of had to, again, outvalue your opponent and just kind of make your way in there. So it really allowed cards like this to shine. Now, in a quicker set, this would be a terrible card. That's like, sure. A game's decided by turn 6. Well, while that may stabilize a little bit, I think it'd be a little too little too late at that point. But in this set here, found its home. It was awesome. And yeah, I could not play enough of this card.
Yeah, it's really sweet. I think just a closing note for me, I don't have any super deep thoughts on Kamigawa, except it was a sweet set. I mean, it was a great set for you to make your triumphant return in.
Yeah, it was. I'm glad I made my return in this one. This was like, and this is going to be kind of a theme whenever I start talking about New Capenna here. As you know, I'm a Batman fan, especially the set with Christian Bale. So sure. I'm going to make the comparison that Neon Dynasty was like the Dark Knight. And then we'll talk about how that kind of relates to New Capenna. You probably already know where that's...
As a Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah, yeah.
This isn't a car.
That might be fair. I think that's fair.
I kind of wonder, had Kamigawa not come right before that, I think I would be a little bit more excited about Capenna than I am as it currently stands. I'll leave it at that.
I think that's fair. Okay. I think in that case, that's a good transition to get your quick set review. Once again, it is the time for set review.
Okay, so I have so many notes here with New Capenna, and I wanted to be able to... I'm just going to run through the list of everything that I have, just talk about my overall thoughts, and this is all just initial thoughts from... what did I get up to here in Kamigawa? I guess I got up to the Gold 1, so I kind of got there a little bit, so...
Yeah, for sure.
So these are my notes here. So my first thing, just because there's so many different color requirements, the player with the most treasures wins the game. And there's only 20 cards that actually make treasures. There's a couple of cards that give your opponents treasures, and those are going to be bad for you. You're going to have a bad time doing that. I think initially for me, I was trying to think of what lanes can I draft and what am I gonna go for? What would I be excited about? I know all the different factions, I guess they don't call them guilds, but the factions have their own strengths. None of them really stood out to me as ooh, this is definitely the one I want to go for. It's like ninjutsu for ninjas, in Kamigawa. I was yeah, I really want to go for that. I wasn't overly excited about any of the factions, and that's I definitely want to draft this one. I love Jund. That's what I usually play whenever I play modern or anything like that. So obviously
the Riveteers.
Yeah, I'm obviously excited about the Riveteers, but their mechanic I'm kind of middle of the road on. I think if any of them, and I apologize, I cannot think of the factions themselves, but the Bant, the green, white, blue with the shield counters, I think is the generally
brokers,
strongest. Yeah. But again, I don't know. But going into this, I'm going 5-color value at this point, and because the land fixing is slow overall. There's a lot of multicolored like tap lands coming to play tap lands. Obviously, you got your rares that are not going to be tapped, and they have some other kind of fixing in there as well. But I think this set's going to be slow. I think it's going to be very slow.
I think that's just
okay.
When you get a 3-color themed set, it's going to lean slow.
I think so too. I just think I'm trying to think about this compared to like Shards of Alara and like that set. Mm-hmm. They had like hybrid mana more so, and there are some hybrid mana cards in here, but I think by allowing that flexibility, I think that helps to speed up the game just a little bit more, whereas this one just...
Yeah.
I think it's really going to be in slow mode here on this one, which is fine. I have nothing wrong with that. I just think that's just generally where these games are going to go.
I think so too. Although there are as well some very powerful monocolored cards.
There are.
And so I'm wondering if like maybe the best place to be will be a mostly 2-color deck where you splash some powerful 3-color cards.
Yeah.
And you'll be able to outpace opponents who are spending their entire early game just building up a mana base.
Yes. I think that is probably where, especially early in the format, I think if you could just be as monocolored as possible, so obviously, 2-color would be better than 3 better than 4, so on and so forth. I think that's probably how you're going to get people. If you can be quicker, I think that's probably where you want to be initially.
Yeah.
I think there are going to be some cards that can outdo that kind of strategy, but yeah, we'll just have to kind of play around with it and figure it out. Quick note, grading multicolored cards here were extremely difficult for me because I had to rank it within the faction itself, and then I had to rank it with other factions.
Right.
Ooh, that was... Normally, I grade within a color, and I'll just go top to bottom and just put the grades in there. This time, I put them in categories, and I had to rank them within each of the categories. So, like A minus, B minus, so on and so forth. And I would rank them within that and say, okay, this is the top, C plus. Is that better than the worst B minus? And I literally had to do stuff like that. I really struggled with this one. So I have a feeling I know what the answer is, but I'm either going to be way off or I'm going to be really close to what LSV's doing. So I don't think there's going to be any in between on this one. So I had more B level, and I had more D's and F's in this one than I have in any other set. So, I think we're going to have some wild swings with this one.
Yeah, for sure. I think this, much like Kamigawa, leans much more towards complicated than simple.
I think so too. All right, I'm going to ask you what your thoughts are on this one. I know what I think. Let's hear what you think as well. Do you think this is a Prince or a Pauper deck? Or a set, excuse me.
I think it's definitely going to be Pauper.
You think so? Okay.
I think the power level among the commons and uncommons is pretty nuts. And I think it's because, as you said, you gave a lot more Bs and a lot more Ds and Fs. I also I was giving out Bs like they were Tic Tacs.
I was worried I was giving so many Bs. I was like, man, that's just so many.
Yeah. And so I think it's going to be a very flat set. I think it's going to be dictated by the commons and uncommons.
Okay.
And especially a handful of commons that we'll talk about. Although, as I was grading it, I was like, oh my god, the power level at common and uncommon is just out of control.
Yeah.
But then I was listening to LR. I was like, it's not really. It's just that there's a handful of cards that really skew the data, I think.
Yep.
There are a couple commons in this set that are better than any uncommon and are going to be better than most rares in the set.
Yeah,
which is bizarre.
It is, and I kind of wonder, and I know that statistically those should be about on the same level, but as far as how often you open those up in packs and all that. But Yeah, I actually thought this was more of a Prince deck. I thought the Bomb, Mythic Rares, and Rares would kind of outdo the overall commons and uncommons. Now, it's just a quick cursory look at the Rares and Mythics. Now, I did not research them nearly as much as I did here at the common and uncommon level, but there's not that much removal in this set, especially compared to Kamigawa. And on top of that, there's shield counters and everything else like that really kind of negate a lot of the destruction that is within this set. So I kind of think it's who have the strongest bomb is going to win the game, but I hope I'm wrong with that one. I really do, because I much prefer having a popper set where, like, I feel like I have a fighting chance instead of, like, those dragons in Kamigawa could have easily just been, like, so obnoxious, and there's like, well, I might as well just scoop here just for quality of life purposes. I never felt that way, and I was really happy about that. So
totally, it was a pretty unusual situation where they would cast a rare into an even board, and you were like, well, I'm effed.
Yeah, exactly. I hope this doesn't happen, but I kind of feel like
that's interesting that you don't like the removal in this set. I think there's actually a fair amount of good.
You
removal
think so?
In this set.
Maybe I just didn't.
You've got your murder. You've got the pacifism variant. You've got blue has the 4 mana tap it, never untaps, and you get a 1/1 unblockable. Every color has the I don't know what you want to call this cycle, but they're color hosers.
Sure.
Where it's like it costs this much, but if you're targeting a white creature, it costs 2 less or whatever.
Yeah.
All those are really good, and they're extra good in a multicolor set where you're more likely to hit. So I think the removal is actually... I think there's a good chance this will be the set that you want, where the removal is actually decent.
I really hope so. I don't know. Again, I think it's kind of going from, like, the Dark Knight to the Dark Knight Rises. I think this still is a good set, but we're coming off one that was just, like, an all-star. Just so good.
Yeah, it's very true.
And I think I might have a little bias.
That's
like
that.
Recency
I think
bias.
that's totally fair. I still, like... I'm having nightmares about 4 months of playing Crimson Vow, which was just a total shit show, and so this still looks just great to me.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's very fair. So, again, I hope it's more of a popper style set, but yeah, those were my fears whenever I was kind of initially looking through them. Let's see. I think that's really all I have. Oh, one quick note. I don't want to play the set in paper. There's so much stuff to track with it.
Yeah, I mean...
I'll stay with digital. And
I mean, I want to do that anyway. It just makes life so much easier.
It really does.
I don't have to go into a sweaty game shop. Like...
Yeah, I totally get that. I hate that for the card stores and all that, because I want to support them and give them my business, but sometimes these sets are just so difficult to try and keep track of that it's just makes it so much easier just to be in digital.
That's true. I mean, again, I compare this to Midnight Mass and Crimson Vow of, like, tracking day-night cycles on both players' turns. Like, this still seems easier to me.
Sure. Yeah, I just kind of wonder if that's just going to be a continued theme. That's just going to be, like, so difficult that it's discourages people like me that, so I was like, well, I can either try and figure this out and have a really slow and grindy, 50 minutes to have a tie game at my local store, or I can just do it here online and get that. So I hope that's not where it's going. Maybe, like between like Kamigawa and this one here, it just happened to be that way.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I just hope that's not a trend that continues.
Sure.
So
I think it probably will, but
I think so. I know. I hate to say it, but I think that is where they're going with it. They're obviously it's cheaper to go digital. So and then they're raising prices here coming up here in the next few months for paper. Whatever.
I mean, why wouldn't they?
Yeah, exactly. So I get it. It sucks. I get it though. So we'll see. We'll see what these next few sets bring.
Right on. All right, why don't we take a quick break, and then we'll jump into the review proper.
Let's do it.
Do you love watching movies? Do you hate watching movies? Boy, oh boy, do I have the show for you. On Watching Movies, April and Kenny watch movies. Instant classics like Pride and Prejudice and The Mummy. Despicable gutter trash like Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Divisive, controversial picks like 2001, A Space Odyssey. Each month our hosts discuss and analyze a movie, then put out a watch-along commentary track. Enticing. Whether you like watching movies or hate watching movies, you'll love Watching Movies with April and Kenny. Now streaming on your favorite platform. All right, we are going to be starting and staying for a long time in multicolor, as you would expect. Very, very much like when we did Strixhaven. It's a multicolored focus set, so there's an overabundance of multicolor cards in this set. And the first one I had on my list was Syndicate Infiltrator. This is an uncommon 2 blue-black for a 3/3 flying vampire wizard. As long as there are 5 or more mana values among cards in your graveyard, it gets +2/+2. So, okay, so the grades. You gave it a B-. They gave it a B. I gave it a C+ and a build-around grade as well. What do you think, to start off with, what do you think of this little sub-mechanic of having 5 or more mana values among cards in your graveyard?
Well, I mean, that's why I'm going digital, right? Like, that was a...
Yeah.
I'm not keeping track of that.
Yeah, that is a hard one to keep track of, I guess. On the plus side, it's a switch, right? Once it's on, it's on.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, exactly. So we saw this mechanic, and it was kind of like met with, I don't want to say controversy, but people remarked on it, where it, the mana values amongst cards in your graveyard matters. So, I don't like it. I don't like how they're doing that, but again, by going digital, I don't have to worry about that. So it's fine. It's just another way to interact with the game, and from that regard, I guess that's cool. But I don't know. This really isn't doing it for me. But now that being said, I think there's enough graveyard interaction in this set in particular. I forgot one of the factions has the like casualty. Another one has it's the one where you essentially loot. I cannot remember for the life of me. Connive, thank you. So between those two,
well, and Blitz sacrifices creatures
Blitz too.
As well.
So there's enough stuff that just encourages the use of the graveyard, or like graveyard interaction, that I think this does it for me. So it essentially becomes a 4 mana 5/5 flying. And end the game pretty quickly. Yeah, that is very good. So, and I think you hit this more often than you don't, especially in blue and black.
That's interesting. If it is a 4 mana 5/5 flyer more often than not, I'm very much on board for it. I just don't know how often that's going to be true. This mechanic reminds me a lot of Delirium. Do you remember that one?
Yeah.
Where it's like it cares about having 4 or more card types in your graveyard.
Right. Yeah.
And this seems like similarly difficult to achieve, because you're going to have in any given limited deck a lot of overlap in mana values of your cards.
Sure. Yeah.
So late game when you draw this, it'll be pretty exciting when you just get to play a 4 mana 5/5 flyer. And early game, it's just a Sky Swimmer Koi.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mostly I guess it's just you think it'll be on more often than not. I think it'll be off more often than on. And so it's right on that line, I guess, between B and C. Sure.
Yeah, I still, like I said, I do think this is more often than not a 5/5 flyer, but I think it's one of those could definitely go either way. We'll just kind of see how I have no idea how this set's going to play out whatsoever. Again, it's so tough to try and figure this one out.
I guess to your point from earlier, if it is a slow, grindy set, this gets better.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, that's something in its favor. All right, do you want to go ahead and read Fatal Grudge?
Yeah, sure. So Fatal Grudge is a black and a red sorcery. It's an uncommon. As an additional cost to cast the spell, sacrifice an on-land permanent. Each opponent chooses a permanent they control that shares a type with the sacrificed permanent and sacrifices it. Then you draw a card. So essentially what you do is you sacrifice a non-land permanent. As you cast this, your opponent has to sack the same type of permanent. And then
so
you get
you
to draw
sack
a
a
card.
creature, they have to sack a creature. Yeah. You sack an artifact, they have to sack an artifact.
Mm-hmm. So I gave this a C-. You gave this a build around B. LR gave this a build around C+. So we're kind of... we're
quite far
exactly on the other opposite ends of the spectrum is what LR did. So
yeah.
I was lower on this one. You were much higher on this one. But yeah, what were your thoughts on this, and why do you like this one?
So there is a question, they talked about this with Black-Red. Obviously, the theme is sacrificing things, right? Which is often Black-Red's theme. Sure. And they mention, and this is true, that it's very much uncertain in any given set where sacrificing things is a mechanic. Is that going to actually be good or not? It's usually not good. So the question is, does this one get there? I think this one is really well supported.
Okay.
There's tons of basic mechanics that let you sacrifice things.
Sure.
Like, both Blitz and Connive are all throughout the set, and it allows you to sacrifice. And that's not counting other things like this that help you do that as well. I think in a removal-heavy deck, this is amazing, because it's like you're getting rid of their stuff, and then they only have one option. You make them sacrifice, and you draw a card. And if you're additionally synergizing on top of your other sacrifice payoffs, I think this card just goes bananas. I think it's very good. I do think that it's not a high priority pick, because if you are red-black sacrifice, you are the only person who wants this card.
Yeah, that's fair.
So maybe that brings it down a little bit, but I think it can get there.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that now that you were saying something. Like if you're in this lane, it's open, then you can definitely build around something like that. That definitely leans towards the build around B, like you'd said. And then like there are cards that do work from the graveyard, so it's not like it's
totally.
Yeah, so I guess I can see where you're coming from there. I looked at it more at face value whenever I gave it the C-, which I kind of had my explanation. So what I said, why I gave this a C-, I said beyond citizen tokens, which we'll get into here just a little bit. I don't think citizens as a mechanic or as a lane is very strong personally.
Interesting.
I personally don't. I didn't like it. I think you're going to be holding this more than you really think. Like, I don't think there's going to be like that much of a go wide strategy beyond like citizens. So I don't think it's unplayable, but I would be curious to see how much this card actually sees play.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a high variability.
Yeah.
Is the black-red deck good? If it is, this is a great card in that deck. If it's not, then this card doesn't do anything. It's a 1-for-1 that you have to set up around. It's not that good.
Yeah.
Although it does segue right into the very next card, Forge Boss. This is 2 black-red for a 3/4 human warrior. Whenever you sacrifice one or more other creatures, it does 2 damage to each opponent, and then it has your favorite...
the coward's clause.
It can only trigger once each turn.
Yeah.
Although I do like what LSV said about that clause here, where he's like, they have that clause so these things don't get broken and constructed. Sure. But it actually does help in limited, because if they didn't have this, it would probably say it does 1 damage to each opponent. And this actually gives you a little bit of extra juice on top of it, because you can only do it once each turn.
Sure.
Yeah,
so that's fair. Okay.
And I mean, you're not often going to be sacrificing tons of stuff every turn, so
right.
I think it's actually good. I mean, they thought it was good too. They gave it a B. We've kind of flipped on these two, me and LR. We exactly flipped, actually.
Huh.
They gave a C+ to Fatal Grudge and a B to this, and I gave a B and then a C+ to Forge Boss. I'm always suspicious of things where the payoff is it pings your opponent. I just so often see them not be that good.
Yeah.
It is puzzling to me, because to me the sacrifice deck fell into the same category that you talked about with Exploit and Crimson Vow and Vehicles in the last set, where it's like, well, do you like this or not? Because you can't... this is a deck that's very parasitic, right?
Yep.
Like,
yep.
you can't just casually throw in things that are sacrificing creatures into a deck. You're going to lose that way. You have to synergize. So it's like, is it good or not?
Yeah.
Is the question. And if it's good, then both the supporting cast and the payoffs have to be good, right?
It's true. It's true. Yeah, I'm interested to see, and that's, it kind of goes back into the, I don't mean to keep harping on citizens as we go along, but yeah, it is one of those things where if the mechanic and the lane and the faction here in this case are, if you have the all-stars, they have to have a good supporting cast in order to really make those work. So yeah, it's interesting to see how that plays out.
Yep. I think I want to skip ahead to one that you have marked and talk about Civil Servant, actually.
Okay, so Civil Servant is a green and a white. It is a common 2/3 cat citizen creature. And the text reads, whenever Civil Servant attacks, you may tap another untapped citizen you control. If you do, Civil Servant gets +1/+0 and gains lifelink until end of turn. So whenever this attacks, I can tap another untapped citizen I control, and then it becomes a 3/3 lifelinker. With this one here, you gave it a B-. LR gave it a C. I gave this a D or an F. I'd say this is unplayable. And we're just miles apart on this one. And I think that maybe
definitely.
we're miles apart on citizens in general, just based on what I'm hearing. So I didn't think it was an overly great faction at this point. I didn't see enough citizen support to be really comfortable with it. And again, I didn't really pay attention to the rares and mythics as much. I tried to just grade them as they were.
No, they don't matter that much.
Yeah. So I don't think this is getting the support it really needs with it. I don't have the numbers as far as like how many citizens there are, like how many cards actually play into citizens, all that stuff. But I remember it being a little too low for my personal liking to say this lane or this faction is supported here. So this card, I see it as, it's 2 very specific mana, which I know that this set is, it's lending to. For a 2/3, kind of a setup to actually get that. You need to get another citizen creature, tap it, and then this becomes a 3/3 lifelinker. I personally don't know if that's doing enough for me.
3/3 lifelinker is a beater.
Yeah, you can do it once, and it has to be attacking. Like, it can't do it when it's blocking.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know if it's doing enough for me in this set. So I don't know. This could very easily be my defeat card.
It's possible. I don't know.
I don't know.
It's definitely a common. I liked the stats. 2/3 for 2 is fine. I just like this package. I'm looking at the 3 green-white cards here. Ceremonial, Groundbreaker, Civil Servant, and Darling of the Masses. Darling of the Masses is a house.
Yeah.
4 mana 2/4. Other citizens get +1/+0, and when it attacks, it makes a 1/1. So it's making 2/1 tokens. The Groundbreaker, equip it to your Civil Servant, turns it into a 4/4 that can attack as a 5/4 lifelinker a lot of the time. I just like what I'm seeing here. And there are so many cards in this set that just are incidentally citizens. Like so many creatures that have the citizen line type.
Yeah. So you have both Civil Servant and Darling of the Masses at a B-. If you don't have a Darling of the Masses yet, but you see a Civil Servant, are you picking it up just because of the stats?
It depends what else is in the pack.
Okay. Yeah.
I do think it's good.
Okay. Oh, that's totally fair. I'm just trying to think through it myself too, and on a podcast, I guess we should talk about it instead of just internally debating.
No, you're fine.
But
that's what editing is for. By God.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, exactly. I thought about this the whole time, and I spoke all about it. So yeah,
I think just a 2 mana 2/3. I'm already pretty happy about. That's above average stats. And in a lot of cases, it can attack as a 3/3 lifelink, and it can get all kinds of other citizen bonuses and synergize with the other citizens. That's a lot going on in a common, I guess, is my main point.
Sure, yeah. No, that's fair.
Like, it's just a lot to like. I mean, 2 mana 2/3 is already pretty good, and then you give it a type, and then you give it other synergies. I think it's pretty good.
Okay. I hope you're
wrong.
right. Yeah.
Could be wrong.
It's, yeah. I think, I'm not sold on citizens yet, but I hope I'm right.
If we're honest, you're D or F, I'm B minus. LR said C. It's probably just the average. It just is a C, probably.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's true. Interesting. Okay.
All right. Well, let's continue on to Glamorous Outlaw. So this is the only one we've highlighted of a big cycle of cards. There's one for each of these factions or families. It's 3-color card. It's 3 blue, black, red for a 4/5 creature vampire rogue. When it ETBs, it does 2 damage to each opponent and you scry 2. And this is the thing that makes it a cycle. You can pay 2 and exile it from your hand, and it permanently gives target land tap, add blue, black, or red until it's cast from exile, and you can cast this card from exile. So the play pattern obviously is early in the game you pay 2, makes one of your lands so it can tap for a bunch of different colors of mana, and then eventually you get up 6 mana, you can cast this as a 4/5 that does some other stuff. We are both kind of on the same page with this card. You gave it a C minus, I gave it a C. They gave it a B minus.
Wowie.
I'm first of all skeptical
Yep.
that you really want to spend a turn paying 2 mana to upgrade one of your lands.
I know. I hate doing that.
I'm not very enthused about that.
Yeah.
Especially like you draw this on turn 4, and it's like, yeah, I don't love that. And then what's the end game for this? A 6 mana 4/5. Those are bad stats on a 6 mana card.
Yeah.
It pings the opponent. I don't super care about that. And you scry 2. So it's mostly 6 mana 4/5 scry 2. How good is that?
Yeah. I'd rather have Imperial Oath.
Well, obviously, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like mana intensive, although, exiling it, all these have this in common where if you use the exile ability, it helps you cast it later, which is interesting. It's definitely interesting. It's definitely a cool way to do mana fixing.
Yeah.
I'm just not convinced that this is very good.
I think, and when I originally reviewed these, I must have just glossed over it because there was so much text on them, but I did not read that second part as what it actually is. So I graded it a little bit lower. I probably would have gone up from a C minus. Probably would have gone to maybe a C.
Right where you're met at the same grade.
Yeah, exactly. At 6 mana, I'd rather be doing other things. Yeah,
totally.
This is just not what. And at 2 mana, again, this kind of leads to why I think this set's going to be slow. Because if this is what you're going to do.
Here's my other problem with this card and all this entire cycle of the 2 mana exile from your hand, upgrade a land. There are 2 common cycles of multicolor fixing lands.
Yeah.
And I think those are just way better than this.
I know.
So I think these are gonna fall off super hard because there are those 2 cycles of lands, and they're both good. Both the cycles of lands are good.
Sure, absolutely.
So I don't think these are going to be great.
I see why they're trying to do it, and I like it, but no.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Although I will say, we talked about complexity, and you were just mentioning this is a common. This has like 10 lines of text on a fucking common, and it's like you're exiling it, and it gives a land a temporary ability, and then you can cast this from exile. It's like Jesus Christ.
I know, it's doing so much.
Yeah, but we'll see where these land. I'm curious. My prediction is that the lands make these less good. There are some that I like. The ones that I like out of this cycle that we're not talking about because we both agreed on are like good on rate. It's like 5 mana 4/4 that taps a thing down. Like that's already good. And so giving it the extra ability of upgrading a land temporarily is just an extra cherry on top. This one I just don't like what you get at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right. I think we're going to talk about your soapbox card next, right?
Kind of seems like it's both of ours a little bit.
It
yeah. But, okay, so we are going to talk about Lagrella, the Magpie. The most difficultly worded card, I think, in about the history of Magic.
It's pretty crazy.
I guess, like, modern history of Magic, there's some crazy, crazy cards from way back when. But
as far as the card that they could print today, this is convoluted.
Yes, it is. Okay, so let's talk about stats here. It's green, it's white, it's blue. It is a 2/3 legendary creature, human soldier at uncommon. When Lagrella, the Magpie, enters the battlefield, exile any number of other target creatures controlled by different players until Lagrella leaves the battlefield. When an exiled card enters the battlefield under your control this way, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. Okay, I've asked you about this, I think, 5 times. I think Twitter went nuts whenever this card went out. Literally, anybody, like, all I could see whenever somebody tweeted about was, what? Every single time. I think that's the consensus, like, what is this card doing? So, Kenny, I'm going to have to rely on you to talk about this card as far as, like, what it's, like, functionally doing.
What it actually does?
Yes.
Okay, so in a limited game, 1v1, here's what the card actually does. It's a 2/3. It exiles an opponent's creature until it leaves the battlefield. So it's like, a Fiend Hunter.
Sure.
Or whatever. It's a Oblivion Ring on a stick.
Okay.
You can also, if you want, exile one of your creatures as well underneath this thing.
Mm-hmm.
So when this leaves, like an Oblivion Ring, those creatures, or one if you just did one, come back. Your creature gets 2 1/1 counters on it if you did it that way.
Okay.
Theirs does not.
So you get a little bit extra advantage. It could be an ETB effect on your side. It could be getting rid of a big creature on their side. If the creatures are somehow even, and that, those 2 +1/+1 counters could be the tipping point, you have that option as well. Yeah. Okay. So very confusing card. But functionally, now we know. Thank you, Kenny, for that explanation as far as like what that means for us in limited.
Well, I mean, I really puzzled through it, and you were asking me questions while you were reviewing.
Sure.
Like, what does this do? What is this? And it's like, I think I have a beat on it. I still didn't have a proper understanding when I graded it because I overlooked the counter thing. I thought that was also symmetrical. It's not. It's just your creature gets the 2 1/1 counters.
Yeah.
Which is why I gave it.
I got.
Which is good. That helped you a lot. I gave it a DRF because I was like, you would never do your own creature. Like, you were gonna you play this, exile their creature, and then it comes back with 2 1/1 counters on it. Fuck that.
Yeah, exactly.
So I gave it a D or F. It's
sure.
They gave it a B plus. I mean, that's correct. You gave it a B. It is a B at least.
Yeah.
Because at worst, it's 3 mana 2/3 exile one of their creatures temporarily. Mm-hmm. Which is a great card.
It is, yeah.
And it could do much more.
Yeah, it definitely can. So, funny story. I had this as a D or an F out of spite, but then I was like, no, I got to be legit on this one. Just because I was mad at the wording of it.
No, you graded it correctly. But it's a strong card.
It is.
This is definitely my most hated card of the set. It's just an ugly, ugly card.
It is.
And it's not helped by, like, sometimes, like, there'll be some crazy wording of how a card works.
Mm-hmm.
But because it's cool, it works. So I'm thinking of, like, I don't know if you remember this card. From M10, one of my favorite cards was Protean Hydra. Which was the classic Hydra where if it loses counters, it doubles the counters, and it had a very complex wording to it. But you understood. It's like, oh, you cut the head off and it gets twice as many heads afterwards. Mm-hmm. I understand. What is this? What's the flavor of it exiles one of their creatures or one of yours, and then it makes yours bigger? Like, there's no flavor here at all.
Yeah. The only, like, I don't know why they chose the Magpie, because I remember when I first started playing, wasn't there a Thieving Magpie? You remember that card? I guess it's like, draw a card. Like, that's what, like...
Well, I mean, a magpie is a crow, and they're famous for, like, collecting things, and, like, they make little, like, treasure troves in their nests. But this is, like, doing that with creatures.
Yeah,
and then buffing some of them. I don't know what I don't know what the hell this is supposed to be.
It's weird. I just,
Good card, though, now that I fully understand it. Oh, my extra note here was that LSV's comment, and I'm just going to read verbatim. He says,
Okay.
I have not met a human being who could understand what this card does on a first reading. And then Marshall did a pre-release. I don't know what that means exactly, but he's played with these cards.
Okay.
And he said when he did this at a shop, I guess. And he and his opponent had to call over 2 other players and a judge to understand what this card did.
Wow.
And these are legit players.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. Yeah,
So
it's very difficult.
Not a good design of a card.
No,
in my opinion.
no, not my favorite either.
All right. Well, multicolor's done.
Yay. All right, let's move over to white. How about it?
Sounds good. What do you got?
Well, the first one I want to talk about, and this kind of, I think there will be a little bit of a theme with this one. We can chat on this one a little bit more, but we're going to stop on Boon of Safety, which the card is white mana. It's an instant. It's common. Simply put a shield counter on target creature. And a shield counter, if it would be dealt damage or destroyed, remove the shield counter from it instead. So, kind of gives it just a little bit of protection instead of destroying. So, and then in addition, you get to scry 1 with this card. So essentially, it reminds me a lot from the last set, even though it's different colors, but it reminds me a lot of Tamiyo's Completion. Or not, sorry, not Tamiyo's Completion.
Her safekeeping.
Safekeeping, there we go, thank you. That card ended up being really good.
It was the best green common.
It was, because it practically countered anything that, you threw at it. Now, it had indestructible, hexproof, you gain 2 life was whatever. That's kind of like that extra that we were talking about with like Okuba Reckoner Raid. But that was effectively a counter to about anything you could throw at it, and that was pretty good. While this is not Tamiyo's safekeeping, this is still pretty good, and I think those shield counters are fairly strong. And for a white mana, I think that's decent. Now, I'm not going to go over the moon with this one, because it is still a combat trick that can be, if you lose priority, it can just be destroyed in that regard or something like that. But it is a nice little gotcha if you can, take priority and get that. But it is a combat trick at the end of the day. I gave it a C+. You actually gave this a B-. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that one, but Limited Resources actually gave this a D or an F. So they're pretty consistent. They hate, overall they hate combat tricks. Sometimes they can overcome their hatred and squeak out with something, but I would more side with what your thoughts are on this one, if you want to share what you think of this one.
Yeah, so I think my 2 big thoughts here. One, I agree with you. I look at shield counters, and I feel like I might just be proven wrong, but they just feel OP to me. They just feel ridiculous.
I think that way.
Don't they?
Well, they kind of negate and that's kind of why I was leaning towards why this is a Prince set, because you convinced me that there's more destruction here in the set, but shield counters are a thing, and that's kind of a counter to a lot of those cards. Now, you don't have to, I think there's going to be very easy ways to just find 1 white mana to put a shield counter on stuff. But I think this is strong, and I think this negates a lot of destruction that's in the set.
Yeah, I'm not excited about rumbling against the deck that's full up on shield counters, and I just can't profitably block anything, and I can't attack into it either. It's like, well, what do? I guess I just sit here. Yeah,
there was and we didn't talk about it. I can't remember the name. I'm trying to look it up here real quick. It was Disciplined Duelist, which is also
strike shield guy.
I'm not looking forward to coming across that one.
Yeah, that's
gonna
disgusting.
Suck. Yeah, that's gonna suck.
I agree. And that's not to say nothing about you could put multiple shield counters on things.
I know you can.
That's gross too. I also went pretty high on this card. I went into the B category. I dipped in there because I know the LR boys were huge fans of God's Willing.
Oh yeah.
So this was a white mana instant a creature you control gains protection from the color of your choice until end of turn. Scry 1. And this was to me just read as a variant on God's Will.
Yeah, it's basically it's the same. Well, effectively,
it's very similar. It's not the same because with God's Willing, you could make it unblockable sometimes.
That's true.
So
okay, yeah, that's true.
It was an extra edge case, but even so, you can push damage with this or force a trade. It's you have your 5 power creature, and they've got a stacked board. Put a shield counter on it and bash in. They have to take 5 or trade, and then you get a scry 1 on top. To me, this does enough. I definitely... It's not a D or F.
Sure.
I think this is different enough from God's Willing. I don't think it gets into the B. I think you're probably the most right of anybody here with a C+.
I think it sees play, but I don't think you're actively going to look for it or anything. If it's if I'm thinking mid-pack 2, mid-pack 3, and beyond for both of those, I'm I'll pick one of those up. Yeah. I would pick it over, some other just kind of garbo cards.
Sure.
I think it's a mid-tier.
Yeah, I think you have the right beat on it. Ultimately,
we'll see.
I'm glad that we're in agreement that shield counters seem disgusting. I'm also just in my head, it's a shield counter is a weird combo. I'm thinking in League of Legends terms. It's a combo Banshee's Veil Guardian Angel. It's just God, that's gross.
It is. Yeah.
And one thing they said throughout their review, which I completely disagree with, they're shield counters aren't that good because, any little ping and it falls off, and it's yeah, but are you using a card to knock off a shield counter? That sucks.
Now you just 2 for 1. You got a 2 for 1 at that point. That's good. That's exactly what we wanted in Kamigawa. Right. Why wouldn't we want that here?
Right. Or I attack into you with my, 4-2 shield counter, and you block with your 2-2 and lose it, and my shield counter.
I've
already I already have my card.
And then you're still left with the 4-2 you got to deal with.
Yeah. So
I like shield counters. See, that is where we're polar opposites on. I really like the shield counters. I think it's straightforward, and you just know what you get with it, and there's plenty to do with it.
There's also payoffs for just having counters on things. So you already want shield counters on things. I think they're really good. And then some cards will just say, oh, you have a counter on a thing? Here's a little bonus for you, or a big bonus.
Yep.
Anyway.
Yeah, I'm pretty high on shield counters. If I had to choose a faction that has the strongest, that seems strongest out of the gate, I would say it's what's the Bant one? I can never remember.
Brokers, yeah.
I think that's probably the strongest one.
I think it's pretty fucking cool.
In my book. Yeah, I agree. Obscura had some just insane cards. We didn't talk about Obscura Charm, but I think that might be one of the strongest uncommons within that, but...
Also, just Connive is a dope mechanic.
Connive is good. Yeah, I still would. Me as a simpleton magic player, I still prefer shield counters because I can understand them and just go with them. But yeah, there's a lot of good mechanics.
You understand
here
you understand card selection and stuff.
Sure. Yeah. It's
okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna skip ahead here, and we can come back to some of your other picks. I want to talk about Patch Up.
Okay.
So Patch Up is 2 and a white, sorcery. Return up to 3 target creature cards with total mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. We both had very different experiences with this card, I think, but wound up at a similar grade. I gave it a B+, you gave it a B-, LR gave it a C-. I just completely overlooked the thing total mana value, 3 or less. Because I was so excited about return up to 3 that cost 3 or less. I typically really don't like things that let you res creatures that cost, not very much. They tend not to be that great. And this one, I was all on board. It's okay, finally they found a way to make me like it. It gives me up to 3 of them. Oh, no, it doesn't.
Yeah. No, not quite, but I still think it's fine. There's plenty of 3 mana and less creatures to get actually onto the battlefield. If it were to go to your hand, that's one thing. But I think to go straight to the battlefield, yeah, exactly. and it's a sorcery speed, which is, kind of less than like what it would be for like an instant. And I understand why they don't make that an instant.
I think they should have.
You think so?
I just don't here's my problem with this card is that, as I now understand it, because I just misread it, wouldn't you just rather this be a good 3-mana creature?
Yes, but I'm going to slightly counter it. This is not much of an argument. Again, it goes back to this set really has a lot of graveyard interaction. If you're conniving a lot, if you're the haste one, can never think of it, but there's just a lot of mechanics that actually put stuff into your graveyard, and if you can kind of cherry pick which ones that you're wanting, that's pretty strong. I would rather see this. Okay, I would rather have seen this be an instant and return to your battlefield tapped. I think that right there would have been a little bit better, because I think what they're trying to do is avoid the combat trick of just putting them onto the battlefield and blocking.
Yeah, they are.
So I would have rather seen instant and come into play tap, so I can play this at end of their turn.
Yeah,
I still think it's okay. I'm a little high with my B-, but I don't think it's like... I would have probably put it C+. That's probably what I would have put it, looking at it again.
I do think this card does have a place in the set. And I think it's, if you have a deck where you have been blessed by God to have multiple Inspiring Overseers, then you should play Patch Up.
Sure.
So let's actually talk about Inspiring Overseer next, which you have marked.
Yeah, I do. So Inspiring Overseer is 2 and a white. It is a Angel Cleric creature. It's common. It's a 2/1. Has flying, and when Inspiring Overseer enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life and draw a card. So I rated this as a C+. You and Limited Resources rated this as a B+. I kind of hover between the C+ and B- range on this one. I know it's a great card. So gain a life, draw a card. That's pretty fantastic. It's got flying, so it has evasion to it. That's really good. And for the longest time, this was in the B- category, but I was like, it's like my top C+ that I have in there. So it was just right there. The only reason why I didn't ultimately go with the B- is because the stats themselves, realizing it has invasion, it's still a 2/1. It can get pinged in the set average power and toughness, which was kind of funny. It's exactly the same. It's 2.7. So it can't really attack into anything. It kind of has to have
if they have flyers.
Yeah, if they have flyers, it has to have a clear sky essentially. But if not, it's not doing much else. So it's like a 3-mana draw a card, pay 1, and then it can block if the skies aren't clear. But I don't know. It's a good card. I definitely see why both you and LR graded this as a B+.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those things where if you cast Patch Up to get it back onto the battlefield, oh man, if you imagine if that was if Patch Up was an instant, you could just put this,
yeah, I mean that's
cast it into their turn. Oh man, that'd be great.
That's what I'm saying. I think Patch Up's biggest role will be extra copies of Inspiring Overseer.
Yeah.
If you have them in your deck.
Yeah, that's
You'll
fair.
play Inspiring Overseer, draw your card, gain your life, maybe get some damage, trade it off, and then eventually Patch Up, play it again, gain more life, draw another card. That's just really good.
Yeah.
And I don't think many people will want Patch Up otherwise.
Sure. I wish I flipped. I had Inspiring Overseer. I wish I had the B- and Patch Up I had the C+. So, but hey, what can you do? That's part of the learning experience.
It is funny. This reminds me. This is going to seem okay. I have two things to call back to in previous reviews we've done. One is Spirited Companion, right? So one that was from Kamigawa. 1 and a white enchantment creature. 1/1 ETBs, draw a card.
Yeah.
Would you say that's a good card?
I would, especially after playing it.
Yeah. This adds an extra mana, but you get an extra power of toughness, flying, and a life. So this adds just an already good card. This is like so much more that it does. Doesn't have the enchantment synergies. I'll grant you that. But
Sure.
This just asks absolutely nothing of you. It's just always going to be
just
good.
Does, yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing I want to call back to is you really hated Inkling Summoning from Strixhaven.
I did, yeah.
That was the lesson. It was the 3-mana lesson that made a 2/1 flyer. You just really hate the stats. 3-mana 2/1 flyer.
I do. Oh, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, that's true.
The funny thing about both those is you're right. Any 1 damage spell or ability will take this out, but them using, like, you already got a card. So
yeah,
if they want to ping this, they can go right ahead.
Sure. No, that's fair. I'll have to remember that from moving forward. So I am pretty low on stuff like that. Yeah, because it is something that's like, well, you remember the it was a 4/1 creature from the last set that target opponent's creature couldn't block. And it kind of runs into that problem where it can get like pinged. Yeah,
there's an ogre of some
kind.
kind.
It's like this ogre of some sort. Like we rate that low and it was 3 mana as well. So it's kind of weird.
Flying makes a big difference.
Flying does make a big difference on that one. It's just kind of weird how like some stats can really make such a huge difference in their grades, even though like the base stats can be fairly similar.
Yeah, it's true.
So, interesting. Yep.
All right, I have one last to talk about rather, which is Refuse to Yield.
Okay.
This is 1 and a white instant. It's a combat trick. Target creature gets +2/+7 until end of turn. Untap it. You and I were on a similar page here. I gave it a C+. You gave it a C. They gave it a dear F. My only comment here was I need to add combat tricks to the category with like counter spells and hill giants. Just roll a dice, like just random number generator to decide what grade to give it. Because I don't know. This is a 2-mana instant that will trick people and get a creature. I've said this a ton playing Arena on MTG ASMR.
Yeah.
At least in my ELO, my rank where I'm at, no one cares about or respects combat tricks.
They don't.
People will block as if you don't have any cards in hand and you don't have mana untapped.
Yeah.
And so I think these cards are just, they're fine. It's not like they're amazing, but they're absolutely fine to play. And this one has extra surprise because you can untap a creature with it. So you will get people with this card. I think it's fine.
Yeah. The way I approach it is with combat tricks, I always assume a D or an F, and then I always ask myself, is this enough to overcome limited resources, essentially hatred of combat tricks? That's essentially how I approach stuff.
That's a good way to approach it.
Yeah, so I just approach it low, and then I try and like work it up instead of like saying, like something for me. It was like, hey, this is +2/+7, so it like keeps a creature from dying, or it can untap to give it pseudo vigilance, something like that. I don't know. Like I equate that to being decent. I wouldn't give it like a B+ or anything like that, obviously. But like if there were a card that started out like really good, such as maybe a couple cards that we're probably going to talk about in red, but we'll see. But anyways, I don't know. I just have to approach it from, it's like, okay, we're all started D or an F, and let's see. It's like, could this be a C-? Could this be a C? Could this be a C+? So on and so forth. So that's typically how I approach it anymore.
I think that's the best way to, like, you need to start from a deficit when it comes to combat tricks, and then see if it actually makes its way up. Yep. Okay, did you have any more in white you want to talk about?
Just one more, just real quick here.
Yeah.
Because we've already really touched on this subject. It's Citizen's Crowbar.
Yes.
I'll read it just real quickly. It's a 1 and a white. It's a artifact equipment, uncommon. When Citizen's Crowbar enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token, then attach Citizen's Crowbar to it. The equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has pay a white, tap, sacrifice Citizen's Crowbar, destroy target artifact or enchantment. This also has equip 2. So essentially what you're paying for is a grizzly bear, in my mind, with the Citizen mechanic, so to speak. And then you also have the option to pay a white, tap the creature, and then sacrifice this equipment to destroy the artifact or enchantment. I looked at the artifact and enchantment numbers on this, and I don't have the numbers on me, but they were much lower than Kamigawa. So it's not, that part's not going to have as great of an effect. If this were in Kamigawa, I'd like this a lot more, but as is, again, this kind of goes back to the Citizens. I'm not too high on it, so I gave this a D or an F. You gave this a B-, and this is the reason why I kind of wanted to chat with it, but we really already touched on the subject. LR kind of split the difference with the C+. So you are definitely much more aligned with limited resources than I am with this one here. So typically it kind of goes back to like it's an artifact, like equipment kind of thing. They generally don't like those as much, and I personally didn't think that Citizens were really going to do it, not for me at least. So I felt more confident about this being a D or an F. I'm kind of curious to see what your thoughts were, if there's anything beyond kind of the stuff we've already said as to why this is a B-.
I think so. I think this is a case where it does so many little things that it adds up to a great card.
Okay.
So
that's fair.
2-mana 2/2 is, 2-mana 2/2 is not good enough in Modern Limited. Like, it's borderline. You can play it, but it's going to wind up in your sideboard.
Yeah.
Has a relevant creature type. Maybe you're saying it's not going to be the biggest thing ever, but that is relevant.
Right.
Gives you an option to kill artifacts or enchantments. Yes, they're not going to pop up as often, but you and I play best of 1. So this card is actually kind of your best friend in best of 1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair.
They have some rare enchantment that you need to get rid of, like the Ascendancy cycle.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
And all of a sudden your 2/2 can deal with it and leave behind a creature that you care about. And a cheap equip cost. Like, it just did so many different things that I thought it added up to a pretty good card. And I was really thinking of best of 1. Like, this is actually this is how I want to get my destroy target artifact or enchantment in a set that doesn't have that as a focus.
Yeah, that's fair. And in best of 1, yeah, that would be a lot better. Yeah, I really just need to play Citizens. I just need to just like draft them or just like watch, Nami or LSV or whomever play Citizens and just see how effective they really are.
Yeah, I like, for this case for you, I like the Marshall approach. He always says, like, I need somebody to beat me with it first.
Yeah,
and then I'll be like,
kind of how I am.
Damn, that was really powerful.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
I think that's totally fair.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, that's all I had in white.
On to blue, then.
All right.
How about an offer you can't refuse? Here's my soapbox card for this set.
All right.
Fuck this card. So
I can refuse this offer pretty easily if I say so myself.
This is 1 blue for an instant. Counter target non-creature spell. Its controller creates 2 treasure tokens. So you alluded to there are some mechanics in the game in this set that give your opponent treasure tokens.
Yeah.
And in a set where mana and color of mana matters so much and treasures are a resource as well, this is very, very dicey, to say the least. So in the LR review, Marshall read this card and he said, no. And I was like, hell yeah, called it. And then Luis comes in and he's like, actually, I kind of like this card. You can board this in against a deck that has some non-creature spells, and then later in the game, you can play this against their non-creatures, and then you don't care about the treasure. And the note I took was a quote from Talladega Nights, which is, with all due respect, and I do mean all due respect, that idea ain't worth a velvet painting of a whale and a dolphin getting it on.
I really thought you were going to go a different direction with this. That LSV, and I have not heard their podcast yet. I'll listen to it after this, but I kind of wondered if LSV was going to come in and say, if you countered your own non-creature spell that you had.
Oh, that's nuts. No.
Okay, so the only world where, and don't I'm gonna say this. Don't do this. Like, just don't do this. That's all I'm gonna say.
What if I just mute the podcast for the next 20 seconds?
You probably should, or just you're trying to bleep me out or something like that.
Yeah.
But I actually, in, I don't know, like Bizarro World or something like this, maybe you could do something like this. You could cast, you have a turn 1 play. On turn 2, you cast another 1 mana spell. You counter it, and then you have 2 treasure tokens for turn 3, in which you have 5 mana.
That's pretty crazy.
Don't do that.
No, definitely not.
Don't do that. I don't encourage. I should not encourage this kind of behavior.
You could cheat. You could cheat somebody with that, and then they play a removal spell, and you just concede on the spot.
Yeah, exactly. I guess that's the only counter to that kind of card, but don't do that.
I hate this card. You know what card this reminds me of?
What's that?
This is all the way back from our first Filthy Casual review of Kaldheim. Do you remember Divine Gambit?
You have to remind me of that one.
So you'll remember when I describe it. This was the white removal spell that lets them put a permanent from their hand on the battlefield.
Yes, I do remember that one.
Removal spell plus show and tell for them. And funnily enough, LSV also thought that had its applications and proved to be a steaming pile of dog shit.
Yeah, it is.
So I do think it's important to look at seemingly bad cards and think about what are the edge cases, what are the corner cases, how do I eke out a little bit of extra advantage by this? But I think LSV saying this is a sideboard C card is just irresponsible ultimately. I think this should fall into the category of if you just treated this as an F, your win rate would go up.
Yep.
Like, just assume you can never play this. Maybe you can play this once out of every 100 matches, but you should just not play it.
Yeah. And again, I'm not promoting this, but
next up is another counterspell, funnily enough, Disdainful Stroke. This is a reprint, 1 in a blue, instant, counter target spell with mana value 4 or greater. You gave it a D or F. They gave it a sideboard D or F.
Okay.
And I gave it a sideboard C. So I don't think sideboard D or F should be a category.
That doesn't work, no.
If I sideboard it in, it's not playable. I don't think is where you want to be. Nope. I do think in a set where it's 3 color is the big theme, you're going to have a higher concentration of 4+ drops.
Right.
And big windmill plays. So I think this actually does get a little bit better. I just want to cut to their conversation about this card in the actual podcast and how they landed on D. And I don't have any more to add on it. And for you, I can see your note here. You're just like you said from previous experience. Oh, it's a counterspell? That's a D or F.
Mm-hmm. It's just simple. Just I see counter, I D or F it. And
I think that's a good average play. Like, that will usually wind up fine.
I would say 80-85% of the time I'll be okay. If not, they might have a C or something like that, which, ooh, okay. I've definitely missed harder on some other cards.
Yep. All right. Man, I've got so many blue cards to talk about.
Yeah, I've got a couple as well.
Do you want to jump in with one?
Sure. I'll jump in with Rooftop Nuisance.
Ooh, I love this card.
Yeah, I must have just not been on board with this one, but let's read this one here. So, Rooftop Nuisance is 2 in a blue. It's a sorcery. It's common. Casualty 1. So, as you cast this spell, you may sacrifice a creature with power 1 or greater. When you do, copy this spell, and you may choose a new target for this copy. And this is simply tap target creature. It doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. Draw a card. So, with this one here, my thoughts were 3 mana to sack a creature to tap. 2 of theirs. I said 1 in my notes, but to tap 2 of their creatures at sorcery speed, to draw 2 more cards. That gets better. That gets better. Yeah, because I originally said sack a creature to draw one card and tap one of theirs, and that's bad. Like that is the D or F, which I gave it.
Yes. I was going to say.
Yeah,
what would you say before you get into the grades here?
Mm-hmm.
What would you give this card if that casualty line just didn't exist?
So 3 mana, tap a creature, doesn't untap in its next untap step, at sorcery speed, and then draw a card. So it replaces itself, and you net a creature that doesn't you net a tapped creature that doesn't untap.
Right.
I would give that probably a C to C plus.
Right.
Probably what I would give it.
Right. So this is that plus more.
Yeah. So I misread that thinking that you had to sacrifice the creature in order to get that too. I'm like, I just don't think there's enough there. So that was a misread on my part.
This lets you cash in a citizen, let's say,
mm-hmm.
to get an extra tap and an extra card.
Yeah. And that's good. I would give that more towards like the C plus B minus range at that point. I would debate on those two.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I was really, like, every time I saw a casualty card, I was thinking of the sacrifice deck. Like, the deck that wants you to sacrifice, and this lets you tap 2 of their creatures, sacrifice, synergize with your sacrifice cards, and draw 2 cards.
Mm-hmm.
This card is in a blue, black, red sacrifice deck. This is nuts.
Well, I mean, like, to your point, you can sacrifice a citizen, which is, blue, white, green. This fits into... this just fits into so many of the factions that, this ends up being good. So I wish that I had read this differently. I would have been much, much higher on it. Probably actually around like the B minus to, which is actually what you graded. LR actually graded this as a C. So in between us, I probably would have strongly considered this as a B minus at this point, had I read it correctly. So my bad. Just
that's all good, man.
One.
I had this is we said like these sets are just getting more complex.
They
over
are,
time, and I had multiple misreads of cards on this one.
Yeah, well, now it's part of it. That's why we have so many cards that we look at. It kind of
true
washes away in the aggregate.
It's true. My next one I want to talk about is Majestic Metamorphosis.
Okay,
which is a callback to Kamigawa. We just got done with, and Suit Up. This is 2 and a blue, an instant. Until end of turn, target artifact or creature becomes a 4/4 angel artifact creature and gains flying. Draw a card.
Okay. Yep, sounds very familiar.
Yep, so Suit Up was 2 and a blue, instant, turn something into a 4/5, no flying, draw a card. So you're trading in 1 toughness for flying, and otherwise it's exactly the same card.
Right.
Suit Up wound up being one of the best blue commons, period.
Yep.
So I felt pretty comfortable giving this the B minus. Often enough, this card will be 3 mana, kill a creature, draw a card.
Yep.
Which is insane.
Good. It's good.
Very good.
I like it.
The interesting thing to me about how they talked about this is that there's some, even though Suit Up was hugely successful in Kamigawa, and 17 Lands backed that up and said it's one of the highest win rate cards, they're still skeptical of this card. Still.
Yeah,
somehow.
Which influenced my grade as well.
As far as like their skepticism?
Yeah, because I remember how good Suit Up is and was in Kamigawa, but they gave that a D or an F. So I'm like, well, geez, this isn't much different. What are they going to give this? I knew that they were higher on Suit Up as they're sunsetting Kamigawa, but I didn't know how much. So I kind of hedged my bets on this one just a little bit. Instead of saying D or an F, I gave this a C minus. Originally, I wanted to give this a C plus, but I kind of hedged my bets just a little bit, try and bring it down. So I like the card. I think it's great. Suit Up was fantastic. I don't see this one being any different in this set.
I mean, this also has just the potential to push through damage.
It does.
Like, you can just get through a flyer with this.
Yep.
So, I think it's quite good.
Yeah, I agree.
That's it for me in blue.
Yeah, I'm good with blue. I think we're ready for black.
All right. First card is, for me, Cutthroat Contender. I had a fair... This is another interesting thing about this set. I had a lot of like soapboxy cards as I was going through this. So Cutthroat Contender is 1 black for a 1/1 creature, Vampire Warrior. You can pay 1 life to give it +1/+0 until end of turn, which you can do once per turn. I gave it a DRF. You and LR gave it a C-. Now, I think you made the right call here. I'll be interested to hear what you have to say. I view this as like an overextension of the love we've been seeing for 1-drops recently.
Sure, yeah.
So for ages and ages, 1-drops were maligned. It's like, just don't play 1-drop creatures. They're never good enough. And then slowly over time, we kind of realized, oh, they're actually okay, and Wizards started pushing them a bit more. So, okay, actually a 1-drop can be good. It can be a fine playable. This is not good enough for me.
No.
I think of this card, and I'm like, what would they just give a 1-mana 2/1? Because this is worse than a 1-mana 2/1.
It is, yeah.
Just strictly worse than a 1-mana 2/1.
Sure.
So, and they don't like those typically. They usually, their comment about 1-mana 2/1s is like, this is kind of, we'll trick you because this is a good card in Constructed where you can really, you know, have exactly the curve that you want. I don't think this is going to get there.
No, and I really debated between a DNF or the C-. I just kind of flipped a coin on this one. I just happened to be on the right side of it this time, but I don't like it either. The only like saving grace that I'm going to give this is that it could be 2 for casualty. If you have something for like 2 in casualty, like you can pay a life for it, which I still don't want to do. I can't really, like, it's a Vampire Warrior. It's not, there's no like real synergy like within this set to do that. So that's kind of out. It's, you know, Citizen's really the main one that they're really caring about. There's not much good to say about this card. There really isn't. So again, I just kind of flipped a coin. I ended up on C-. I'm like, whatever. Just happened to be on the right side with this one.
Yep. I mean, it's very narrow either way.
It is.
I had plenty of cards in this set that I wound up giving C- to because I was like, I don't know where we're going to end up on this.
Yeah.
So it's not that big a deal. I was surprised that they were like, especially the way they talked about it, how positive they sounded about it.
No. Yeah, I wouldn't be positive about it. It has no evasion whatsoever. Like, Okiba Reckoner Raid, once it got past everything, it was still a 2/2 with Menace, so it was a little bit tougher. It had evasion. The Network Disruptor had flying, tapped a creature when it came into play. There you go, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it needs to have a little evasion. Pay 1 life for a 2/1 vanilla creature. It's not doing it. That's just not doing it.
I think it's like 1% better than a 2-mana 2/2.
I don't even know if I could go that far.
Well, that's the thing. If it's not better than a 2-mana 2/2, then it's like, what are we doing here?
I know. It's true. It's very true. Like, it's...
Which is why,
not good.
You know, historically, why they don't like 1-mana 2/1s in Limited, you know?
Yeah, totally makes sense. Totally makes sense. Okay. So I've got a card here. Again, misread this one, but I think it kind of goes back to what I was saying about my personal view of lack of destruction. In this, correct me if I'm wrong, I think this might also get around counters, but I'm not quite sure. But we'll talk about this one here in just a second. But the card is Grisly Sigil. It's a black mana for a sorcery. It's an uncommon. It's casualty 1. So again, as you can sacrifice a creature with 1 power or greater, you can copy this spell and choose new targets. Choose target creature or planeswalker. If it was dealt non-combat damage, that's what I missed. If it was dealt non-combat damage this turn, Grisly Sigil deals 3 damage to it and you gain 3 life. Otherwise, Grisly Sigil deals 1 damage to it and you gain 1 life. Yep. So you could, I was thinking, dang, like a 6-point swing, or for 1 black mana and a creature, like maybe that is a citizen token or what. I thought that's pretty damn good. I did not read the dealt non-combat damage clause on there, so I'd be a lot lower on that. So this is my original grade. I had a B for this one. You had a C-, and then Limited Resources has a D or an F. I would be much closer to what you have with like the C- to maybe C range.
Yeah.
Looking at this one farther. But does this get around shield counters? Because it's just...
No.
It does not. So if there is a 1/1 shield creature and you gave it...
Well,
because it deals damage. It's not even -1/-1. See, like it just gets even worse now at this point. Okay.
It does get around it if you copy it. So if you casualty it,
that's true.
You ping it for 1, and then it will do 3 afterwards. Mm-hmm. So if it's a 3 toughness creature with a shield counter, and you use the casualty, this gets it. But then you're 2 for 1ing yourself.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah, so it's pretty inefficient at that rate.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's just a misread on my part. But
it's a complicated card.
It is. There's just a lot going on, and it just kind of goes back into how wordy and difficult and complex.
Yeah, I mean, I miss the self combo with it of, sacrifice a creature, copy it. It does 1 damage the first time and then 3 the next time. So with 1 mana and a sacrifice, you could do 4 damage and gain 4.
Yeah. No, that's true.
You're still 2 for 1ing yourself.
That's true.
This card, I mean, I think, honestly, this is going to be bad. Best case scenario with this card, you use it to kill a 1 toughness creature and gain a life.
Yeah. That's not good.
Not a good place to be.
No, that's not. Okay. That's that's just a misread on my part. That was, boy, those just killed me throughout the set. Just having little ones like that where it's like, crap, I didn't read that like 1 word.
Yep.
And it just blows it out of the water.
Yep.
All right, what you got?
Next up, probably just a miss on my part. I have Join the Maestros.
Okay.
4 and a black sorcery, casualty 2, so you're sacrificing a creature with power 2 or greater, and you make a 4/3 black ogre warrior creature token. So baseline, this is 5 mana, make a 4/3, which is, obviously not good enough by itself, but is your fallback case. And on the plus side is 5 mana, make 2 4/3 black ogre warrior creature tokens. Now, if you have good fodder for this, what would you give, let's say you're in some sort of deck that is either making tokens or has like...
Cutthroat Contender?
Right.
I mean, it works, yeah.
Yeah. Or let's say the Corrupted Court Official, which is like a 2 mana, make them discard. It's a 1/1. Mm-hmm. What would you give 5 mana, make 2 4/3s, and you lose one of these little fodder creature tokens? You still think that's D or F?
No, I my first thought was like CC plus at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So,
which is where I landed.
Yeah.
This card I don't think is insane, but I think it gets there.
Yeah.
In the sacrifice deck, I think you're gonna sometimes play this, get rid of some dorky ass chump, and make 2 4/3s, and your opponent's gonna go, well, shit.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is okay.
That's fair.
In that deck.
Right. I'm trying to think. Like, you could attack with it, kind of, and you could maybe destroy some of their, like, 4 toughness creatures, or you put them in a difficult spot. It kind of... very, very loosely, I'm going to have that caveat, very, very loosely reminds me of the green Invoke card from Kamigawa. Obviously, it's not that. Like, that was a really good card. But, by putting 2 4/5s out there with, whatever token, that could really turn a game around. Like, this is just a lesser version of that.
Mm-hmm. It's a common.
I could see... Yeah, it's just a common version of the Invoke. That's not bad. Actually, you're talking me more into this one. Now, like you said, you're not going to go out of your way to pick this card, but if it's later in a pack and it's there, you're in the colors, and yeah, you're probably happy to kind of get that one.
Yeah, I think specifically you need to be in the sacrifice deck. Like,
yeah,
you need
do.
to be in the deck that has fodder for this kind of card.
Yeah, you're talking me into this one more.
So we'll see where it lands.
Okay. Yeah, I'm curious. Yeah, like you said, it's not going to make waves or anything like that, but
No,
it's better than unplayable.
What about Rogue's Gallery?
Actually, I like Rogue's Gallery. I think this is...
I do too.
Yeah, this is a good card. So, let me just read it out real quick. It is 2 and a black mana. It's a sorcery, uncommon. For each color, return up to 1 target creature card of that color from your graveyard to your hand. So, especially in a black deck where, like, you know, this one's associated with a lot of, like, graveyard, themed cards. So you're going to have a lot of creatures in your graveyard. This could potentially be up to a 3 mana kind of refill your hand, get 5 creatures into your hand.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of upside with that. I kind of predict that. Well, actually, I think it's going to be higher more times than not because of just there's so many colors involved with this set. So, had it been like, again, going back to Kamigawa, where there's a lot more like monocolored cards and, a lot more splashable cards.
Yeah.
I don't think this would have been as strong as it is like in this particular set where you're going to have 3 manas or three colors in each one of like your cards and stuff like that, and you can pick and choose what you want. So adds a lot of variety by doing that as well. So I think this plays well. I actually gave this a B. I think this is a strong card, especially if you're in that faction already, or some multiple factions at that point. You gave this a B-, so you and I are very close on this one here. Limited Resources gave this a C+, so a little bit lower on this. I actually... oh, yeah, go ahead.
I'll be honest, I don't think it matters what the hell faction you're in.
I don't think it does.
This is a great card. Because, like, at bare minimum to me, once the game gets to a certain point, like turn 5 and beyond, this is, at worst, 3 mana, draw 2 creature cards in your graveyard.
Yeah.
What would you give a 3 mana divination that always gives you 2 creature cards?
Like, guarantees you? I'd rank that pretty high.
That's good.
Yeah.
And this is that plus an
more.
even higher end, where you draw 3 or 4 cards.
Yeah, it's damn good.
I think it's real good. I was actually surprised they didn't come up higher on this card. I thought this was like straight in their wheelhouse of like, ooh, what if a divination, but only drew you creatures and could draw you even more creatures, and we're in a multicolor set? Like, this just seems dope to me.
I actually could have ranked this higher, and I'm going to stake my claim on this one.
Okay.
I think this is going to be like the mythic uncommon of the set. The common's already that's reserved already. We'll be talking about that one here in a minute. But I think of the uncommons, unless I'm just absolutely forgetting one, I think this could be the mythic uncommon of the set.
I think it's good.
I think it's very good. I probably could have made this a B+ to an A-.
B+ for sure.
Yeah.
A- is tough just because, like, you're drawing cards. It's like, if you're behind and you start drawing cards, it won't get you back.
Sure. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
High B makes sense.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm not going to talk about Tavern Swindler. It's a dumb card.
Okay.
We both have a little note on Vampire Scrivener. How about that for a last?
Okay.
Card?
Yeah, that sounds good.
This is okay. So I was talking about the 3 mana 2/1 flyer that you can't get past those stats. Here's some stats I can't get behind.
Okay.
4 and a black for a 2/2 flyer.
That's fair.
Yikes!
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Imagine me pulling my collar. But it has more upside, of course. Whenever you gain life on your turn, you get a 1/1 counter on it. Whenever you lose life on your turn, you get a 1/1 counter on it. You're not going to lose life on your turn. Realistically, that's just not going to happen very often unless you're playing the absolutely incredible OP Tavern Swindler. So you're looking to gain life on your turn with this,
right?
Which you can do. That's possible.
Yep.
There is, for example, a 2-mana 1/1 white flying lifelinker, which could gain you life. How big does this need to be before you're actually happy? I think you need to get 2 counters on it.
That's where I'd be too. I'd say a 4/4 flyer for 5
is fine.
That's a Sarah Angel, right?
Yep,
Pseudo.
that's good.
Yep,
I'd be okay with that.
Yep.
That's a lot of work to get there, and the problem I have with this card is drawing it late.
You want to be on curve with this one?
Well, I'm just saying, like, let's say it's late in the game. It's turn 9, and like, you and I have been in this situation so many times. Like, oh, I need something. I need to get out of this situation, and you draw your 5-mana 2/2 flyer.
You're like, crap. What else
well,
do we
fuck
have?
Me.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
So I don't think it's great. I gave it a D or F, and maybe it's not a D or F. I would be very shocked if it got to the B category.
That's fair. I don't think it's unplayable. I think there's something in between where we are with this one.
I just don't like cards like you do need to build around this a bit to make it good.
Yeah, I should have made this. I did not make this build around, but I should have. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, obviously, if you don't have any life gain, then this card is,
right, and then
it's not a card.
You don't want to be playing this. Yeah.
To be fair, I just gave up on putting build arounds because like every card in this set is a build around, basically.
I might as well have been. Yeah. If everything's a build around, then nothing is. So.
Well, there's so many like I started in the multicolor section. It's like 3 specific colors for a 3/3. It's like I'm done.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
yeah.
So let's go on to red.
Okay.
And let's talk about Antagonize. You want to read that one?
Sure thing. So Antagonize, I like the simplicity of it. It's 1 in a red. It's an instant. Target creature gets +4/+3 until end of turn. That's it. That's the tweet.
Nice and simple.
So yeah, it's just about as vanilla of a combat trick as you get. And that is what influenced my grade and decision. But what'd you give?
I gave it a C.
Okay, I gave it a D or an F because Limited Resources hates it. They always hate combat tricks, and sure enough, D or an F on this one.
Yep, that's true. I think I first want to just give kudos to your method because I think you have the right idea. I do think this is good.
Yeah. I'm not going to disagree with you on that.
This wins any combat.
It does, yeah.
If you block with anything, you give it +4/+3. You're winning that combat. So X is a little removal spell, and 2 mana to do an extra 4 damage out of nowhere will end games.
Oh yeah,
like this will end games.
I totally agree. No, and like you said earlier, at our elo, people don't respect cards like Antagonize.
They do not.
I think it's good for us, like, yeah, at LSV's level, at Nummy's level, at Marshall's level, yeah, that's like, they're going to look out for that. They know that kind of stuff. But at our just general play level, these cards right here are just not the D or F level. They're probably like the C+ level, that C to C+ level. It's not like you're going to like actively get them.
C.
Yeah, I mean, it's like if you're trying to fill, say you have like, you're kind of low on playables and like you're trying to fill out the 40 cards and you've got 1, maybe 2 spots left and you're like, I kind of need something. This is a fine addition. Like it's probably going to get rid of one of their cards. It can push in some more damage. It can do a lot of stuff. There is utility in that.
And also, in a multicolor set, this is not very demanding on your mana as far as colors.
You'll be able to play it. It's not something you're necessarily going to have to splash for.
No. So yeah, I think we're in total agreement. You just made the better call as far as how to grade it compared to LR.
Yep. My heart says C. My mind just kind of went to D or F because of the.
That's the right call.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's the right call. Speaking of your mind and your heart, I want to read out Glittering Stockpile.
Okay.
So every single set we have reviewed has had a 3 mana rock with some kind of extra upside. You really like these cards. They hate these cards, and they always end up being at least okay and sometimes good. So last time, Network Terminal.
Mm-hmm.
Good card.
Yeah,
Just wound up being good. This is 2 and a red, so it is not colorless this time.
Right.
2 and a red for an artifact treasure. Tap to add a red, and when you do, you put a stash counter on it. And you can tap it to sacrifice it and get X mana of any one color, where X is the stashes that you've put on the stockpile.
Mm-hmm.
So you are down on this card compared to other mana rocks of this variety.
Yeah. I don't like that. While it's fine, it's... Especially in this set, so... Like, it's 2 and a red, so that's like strike 1 against it instead of just being like 3 colorless. It's not something you just automatically just put in any deck and like you'll make it work.
Right.
Another thing too with like Network Terminal is just like you tap it and just add a mana of any color. Well, this adds red, and then you can add a stash counter on it. So it's like, yeah, it adds red, which
you already have.
You already have it, but like typically with those mana rocks, you want that to be able to, be your fixing.
Right.
This is not doing that until you get to sacrificing this stockpile where it adds it adds X mana of any one color, which is kind of the other strike against it. I'd rather just add like, I don't know, like this is a treasure in and of itself. Why not just make more treasures, or just like rework it to be like, give it like something to do with treasures? And I think it'd actually be a little bit more on theme with the glittering stockpile at that point. But
that would be cool.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I understand, like you just added like X treasures by sacrificing it. That might be a little too much. But
I was gonna say, I wonder if they tried that and I was just like, yeah, this is too good.
Yeah, it might be. Yeah, so they just really nerfed this thing. So I think I'm still kind of high on this one by giving it a C. I'm the highest of us 3.
Yeah.
You gave it a C-, and of course LR gave it a D or F. But
well, yeah,
I get this one.
Unseen.
Yeah, exactly. I get why this one is lower. Like I don't like it nearly as much as like a Network Terminal. I'd much rather much rather have Network Terminal than Glittering Stockpile at this point.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing against it is in a multicolored set, it's a colored artifact that adds the same color that you had to have for it. So it's like, what am I doing with this card?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, what do you got next?
Okay, so I'm going to kind of go back to our one-droppers. Yeah. I want to preface to say I think this is probably one of the best one-drop commons. I can't even say it's one of the best commons in this set because, again, that will be coming up.
No, unfortunately.
Right, yeah. I really like Goldhound. So this is just a red for an artifact creature. It's a treasure dog, which I think is kind of cool too. It's 1/1. It's first strike, menace. You can sacrifice it to add 1 mana of any color. This kind of goes back, like you had mentioned, there like some of these cards just do so many like little things that adds up to this like great card. I think that's what Goldhound is. I actually gave this a B-. I love this card. It's quick, which is kind of counterculture to the rest of the set, in my opinion. So, if you can give this a +1/+1 counter, they got to block it with 2 creatures in if it has first strike. Like, this is obviously like best case scenario. Like, if they block with like 2/1 toughness creatures for whatever reason, and then you block, you got first strike, it's still alive, you kill 2 of their creatures. I still think there's enough here that like this has so much gas to it that it can help facilitate, like, you can have if you were to attack with it, it's got first strike, menace, you're going to get 1 damage in there, or you can just sacrifice it to add 1 mana on turn 2 to get like 3 mana. I think there's just a lot of options and a lot of things that you can just do with this that really just make this just a kind of an all-star common card.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think I was thinking the exact same thing of like so many little things coming together to make a terrific card.
Yeah.
If this had been in Kamigawa, this would be amazing. The fact that it's an artifact on top of everything else. That doesn't really matter here. That's an artifact.
Yeah.
But this card is sweet.
I love it.
It loves combat tricks. It loves wearing equipment. It loves being modified in any way.
Yep.
And then once it's not useful, you can use it to ramp up.
Yep.
Like, That's a lot of action on your 1 mana spell.
I agree. Like I said, I have to preface it by saying it's a 1 mana common, but I think it's the best 1 mana common that I think we've reviewed to date.
Best 1 mana common.
I would go that far. I really like this card just because you can just do so much with it and interact with it so much.
I'd have to go back and review, but it's definitely very good.
Yeah.
We can agree on that.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. So, we've got 2 more cards to talk about in red, and we both have comments on them.
Okay.
I see why, because we have the exact same grades on both. So, Rob the Archives is the first one. So this is 1 in a red, sorcery, casualty 1, so you can sack a creature with 1 power to copy it, 1 power or greater. It lets you exile the top 2 cards of your library, and you may play those cards this turn. So I gave it a build around B-, you gave it a B-, they gave it a D or F. I was kind of proud of myself in this review. I've done previously not the best job of thinking about cards in the context of other things and other synergies that they can have across the set. And I was pretty happy with myself in this one of like, the sacrifice deck has access to casualty and blitz. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And so I gave this a boost based on that, and that's why I gave it the build around.
Sure.
But I ultimately think LSV has the right idea on this one. He said regarding this spell, when you copy it, you've already spent 2 mana.
Sure.
So now, and you only get to the end of this turn to do it, and it's at sorcery speed. So let's say you have 6 mana, you play this, copy it, you only have 4 mana to play with to cast 2 things. So, how good is that?
My counter is, did you like Experimental Synthesizer from Kamigawa?
I do like that, yeah.
I do too. And that was like, for 1 mana, you get to exile 1 card. And then, you could sack it to, like Black-White Sacrifice, all that stuff, which, again, kind of parallels to this. Or you could pay 2 in a red and sacrifice again and, try your luck again. This one here is for 2 mana, so it kind of splits the difference. You exile the top 2 cards, though, so it kind of doubles at that point. So I think it's a little bit more efficient. A little bit. I'm saying that loosely. But if you think about the makeup of your deck, about half of your cards are lands. So chances are, like, don't play a land if you plan on playing this card, because chances are you're going to get a land and a spell. Like, that's in general what I kind of think this card is going to do. So if, with the casualty aside, if I just cast it for its cost at 1 in a red and a sorcery, exile top 2 cards, and I can play those cards this turn, I still like it. I still like it as is. I think with the casualty that you can have plenty of choices. Now, if you're playing it for the casualty cost, you're going to play it later, like turn 5 or later, I would guess.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
I think without casualty, I think it's early plays. I think with casualty, I think it's later plays. So I think this card is fine to borderline good at any point in the game. So I still think this is a good card, which is why I gave this the B-. And if you have, like, at that point, if you have, like, say you're like turn 5, you're just like looking for stuff, and you just exile like 4 lands at that point. Well, that's 4 lands that you're not having to draw every single turn. So I just think that this provides good filterability for a relatively low cost. So I think this is good. I don't see why this would be so low in like an actual unplayable. I don't think it's that. Maybe
I'd be willing to see it. Like, we've seen a lot of this type of card in the last few sets, and they always wind up better than they look.
Yeah. I think there's somewhere in between where we are and where Limited Resources is.
It's also uncommon. I mean, that's always a little like clue that maybe this is better than you think.
Yeah. I like this card. I think it's good. So we'll see what happens.
And then the last red we want to talk about is Sticky Fingers.
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to read that one out?
Sure thing. So Sticky Fingers is for red mana. It's an enchantment aura. It's common. It's enchant creature. Enchanted creature has menace, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, create a treasure token. Won't belabor what the treasure token is. I think we all know where we're at there. So when enchanted creature dies, draw a card. So again, like this really goes back to the exact same stuff I was saying about Goldhound. I think I'm just more excited about the red cards. You were more excited about the like white cards and all that stuff. Just having like all the little things. For some reason, the red cards and like their text just do it for me. White's the same way for you. It gives a creature menace, so it gives it some evasion. Treasure tokens, that's really important here in this set in particular. And then, okay, so now they kind of need to target it a little bit because you're going to get ahead at this point. Like, if you're getting more mana, if you're able to attack through their stuff, and if they, like, it kind of puts them in a position to needing to kill it. And then at that point, you get to draw a card. So I think I think this just is an all-encompassing, and all for 1 mana. Like, that's another thing, too. It's cheap, it's quick, it does a lot of stuff. So I think this is just a really good card. It's another one
of those, as we were saying, like the 1 mana spell that just does a lot of little things.
Yeah. So
I think it's great.
Yeah, I do too. I gave it a C+. You did as well. Again, LR gives us a D or an F. I really thought, again, going back to my method of saying, does this overcome LR's hatred of combat tricks? For them,
in this case,
it doesn't.
It'd be an aura. Yeah,
it's an aura in this case, so it's a chance for a 2-for-1. So,
but it's not.
It's not. Like, if it makes it onto the creature, then that's really good.
It replaces itself at worst.
Exactly. So for them, it didn't overcome it. I think it does in prime fashion, but I think this is a very good card. You could even put this on Goldhound. It kind of overlaps a little bit because of the menace, but you could sacrifice the Goldhound for a treasure token, draw a card. Like, that's a lot of value.
Yeah. I think one extra thing to add on top is I don't even hate this later in the game. You throw this on a 4/4, you've got a 4/4 menace that's making you treasure, and then they have to deal with it, and when they do, you get a card back.
Oh, it also works with the Blitz as well. You could just tack it onto something that's going to die already. You draw 2 cards, right?
To cycle it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, that's something a little extra. I mean, I think most of the card's value is what you've already outlined.
Right.
The thing that blows my mind in this, and there was a real theme of this all the way through LR's review, everything you're saying, LR was on board with.
I mean, this is good on a 1-drop. Like, you start making treasures right away, and then if they kill your thing, you at least get your card back.
Yeah,
I bet Sticky Fingers is actually good. There's a little some kind of like maniac 1-drop aggro here that Sticky Fingers kind of enables. It's probably close to a D overall, but there would be times when it actually has a good effect on the game.
Psych.
I don't know why.
I don't either.
It seems totally good to me.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, I don't know either. A conundrum for sure. So that's all I had for red. Do you have anything else?
No, we can go on to green.
Okay.
So next we have the Capenna Express.
Woo! All aboard, baby! Woo!
Toot-toot! Yeah, my favorite card.
Yeah, it's okay.
So this is 3 and a green for a 6/6 artifact vehicle. Woohoo!
Yeah.
Has crew 3, and you can sacrifice a treasure as an alternate cost to crew it. Okay. So you gave it a build around C, they gave it a build around C, so perfectly done by you. I gave it a D or an F.
It would have been a D or an F had I not said build around.
So you just like it in the treasure deck?
Yeah, I mean, you got to dedicate yourself to a treasure deck at that point. I mean, so 4 mana 6/6 is probably going to sit there for a lot of times, unless you're in a dedicated like treasure deck.
Yeah,
it doesn't have trample. It doesn't have anything. Right. It's just like a vanilla 6/6 at that point. And you got to sack a treasure for it too. It's like,
which you're going to want to use to cast your cool
No,
spells.
yeah, unless you're just like swimming in tokens or treasures rather. But
I'm just still. I've yet to see a vehicle that I was like, "Whoa, that's a crazy vehicle." Outside of rare, you know.
No, that's fair.
And this just seems like this reads a lot to me like Futurist Sentinel from the last set, which is also a 4 mana. It's basically the same exact card. Maybe I'll get pooped on by it. People like turboing out treasures and slamming my ass with their 6/6. I doubt it though. I guess I'd be surprised. I just think a creature that you have to continually dump resources into is not a good creature.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's why I said even at build around. Like typically, anytime I say build around, it's usually, well, yeah. Typically, I say it's a B or better.
Right.
I always like to say build around B or better. And this is my build around being at a C. And I just told you, I was like, I'm probably going to give this a D or an F had it not been a build around.
Totally. I actually took note of that too. I said build around C is not where I want my cards to be.
No, it's not.
I don't want to have to go around the bin and work my ass off to make a card okay.
That's average. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like I'll just play a normal 4-drop. Like, what am I doing working for this card?
Yeah, exactly.
When I could be playing Jewel Thief.
Okay. So I'll read the card here real quick. Jewel Thief is 2 and a green. It's a cat rogue. It's common somehow. I don't know how. It's a 3/3 vigilance, trample. When it enters the battlefield, create a treasure token. I have a B-. You and LR both have B+ on this one. I'm too low. I'm too low.
It's just hard to believe.
Is this an A? Like, is this an legit
probably
A category, whether it's A- or A?
Well, I was thinking about, so this card and the Inspiring Overseer, I think actually are going to be both A's. Not necessarily in terms of their power level, but in terms of when you have to pick them.
I know.
You will not see these cards past pick 2 in a pack.
No,
ever.
I don't see how you could. And if it's kind of like if you're not playing them, you're going to get beat by them.
Yeah, for sure.
Vigilance and trample. Throw a shield counter on this thing. Oh my god, I would hate to deal with this thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's going to wreck a lot of stuff.
I mean, it's not a fair comparison I just made between Capenna Express and this, because this requires absolutely, it's so pushed, and it requires no setup of any kind. And the other thing about this and the Inspiring Overseer that are bizarre is we are talking about a set built around, shards, like 3 color pairs. And both this and that one are 3 mana creatures that only require 1 color pip.
Yeah.
So they slot into like every single deck.
Yeah.
I don't know. These cards are weird.
If Jewel Thief is in any pack that you minus, like, if it's pack, I don't know, pack 2 or later, like, sight it in.
If you're like in
it.
pack 3 and not in that color, I guess you have to pass it.
I don't know. Really?
Well, you probably have to think about, can I make it fit?
I'm trying. Like, regardless. Yeah,
I do think realistically these are like, I mean, they remind me a bit of, what was the card? This was in Midnight Hunt. It was the 3 mana creature that you looked at your top few cards and you put one in your hand and you milled the rest, and it was a good body.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking
about. I do. I
don't
remember the card, though.
That was also one of those cards where it's like, this is better than most rares. Just straight up. Jewel Thief is better than most rares in this set.
I agree.
So, I mean, there you go. You're just not going to see this card unless you open it.
You're right. Yeah,
it's a common, though, so you will see it.
You'll see it. It's just insane. I almost, like, when I saw this, whenever it first got released, I saw it on Twitter on a tweet, and it was a little like on the blurs, like somebody taking a picture of it and stuff like that. So I was like, oh yeah, that's just not right. Because I saw it at common. I was like, oh, that's just not a common. And now it is. It's like, what are we dealing with? Like, God.
Yeah, Marshall's comment on this was like, I think it's a mistake. And he's like, not like a balance mistake. He's like, I think somebody like filed it, like, just put the wrong rarity icon in the card file or something.
I agree. I don't like. How is this not an uncommon?
I don't know. It's bizarre. Anyway,
hey,
great
we'll
card.
take it. Yeah, great card. Draft it. Like, pick it up.
Yep. All right. What do you want to talk about next?
Let's take it to the streets, baby.
Take it to the streets.
Yeah, that's right. Let's take it to the streets. So it's actually called Take to the Streets. I wish it was like Take to the Streets, baby. But anyways, I digress.
In our hearts.
In our hearts, that's what it is. So Take to the Streets is 4 and a green. It's a sorcery. Creatures you control get +2/+2 until end of turn. Citizens you control get an additional +1/+1 and gain vigilance until end of turn. So it's overrun especially for citizens at this point.
Right.
Again, like, I'm not going to belabor the point. I'm not as high on citizens for this one here, so I gave it a C-. You gave this a build around C+, which I agree with that now, like, that we've had more discussions with it. LR actually gave this a build around B+. I think that's a little excessive, but again, like I said...
I mean, obviously I do too. That's a full letter grade past what I gave it.
Boy. So... I would much rather have Jewel Thief.
Yeah. I mean,
okay. I guess, like, looking at their grade, they just had Jewel Thief just as a straight just B+, versus this has to be a build around B+. So okay, so it does have a small caveat to it. But
yeah,
again, I'm not that high on citizens. But, like, at the end of the day, this is just an overrun that's actually easier to cast than an actual overrun. So, it just has one.
But it doesn't give trample.
It doesn't give trample. So, and it's a sorcery.
On a board with a lot of citizens, this does just end the game.
Sure. Absolutely.
And I think that's where they're coming at it from. It's like, if you are in the dedicated citizens deck, this is 5 mana, they lose all their creatures, or they just straight up lose.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, I guess that's where it is. I just don't know how often you're going to see a board with, 6 citizens running around.
I just don't think you get that many citizens. I know that they're wanting to make that a go wide strategy. I don't see that happening.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
I've got up next Social Climber.
Okay.
Which I really like the art on this card.
It's pretty cool. I like that one too.
Very striking.
Mm-hmm.
2 and a green. For a creature human druid, a 3/2 has Alliance, which we have not talked about yet.
Oh, we haven't.
It's just when a creature enters the battlefield, something happens. In this case, when a creature enters the battlefield, you gain a life. So it's got the Soul Sisters clause, basically. I gave it a C. You gave it a C-. They gave it a D or F, and I'm just surprised. I guess like a 3-mana 3/2. It's nothing to write home about, but it's, just pretty standard. But, this is a 3-mana 3/2 that by the end of the game will gain you 4, 5, 6 life.
Sure.
And that seems totally fine to me.
Yeah, I'd like to have that life, that additional life that I can work with. Yeah, I don't think it's stone cold unplayable, but I'm in between you and LR at this point, so their DF here at C.
Right.
So
sure.
I don't know. It just kind of depends. I don't think this sees too terribly much play. It'll see some, and some decks might really need the added life gain. Oh, that vampire would be good. This would help that vampire. So
that's true.
Stuff like that. I think there's just enough little synergies that this enables with the life gain that it could see some play.
I think so too. I mean, it just trades off with everything and buys you some time. Against an aggro deck, this is really annoying.
Sure. Yeah, I think it sees plays. I don't think this is stone cold unplayable.
All right. What do you got next?
All right. My next one is, and this is just because I was kind of banking on one of the abilities of this card here. So the card is Venom Connoisseur. It's 1 and a green. It's a 2/2 human druid at uncommon. This also has Alliance, so 2 cards in a row here with Alliance. So whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Venom Connoisseur gains Death Touch until end of turn. If this is the second time this ability has resolved this turn, all creatures you control gain Death Touch until end of turn. And I know that LSV, he really enjoys Death Touch.
He does, yeah.
He really does. Yeah, I do too. I was like, oh man, this is just a slam dunk. I'm gonna give this one a B-. Like, I actually do like this card. I mean, it is a grizzly bear with a lot of upside. So I was like, B-. I feel pretty confident in that. You gave it a C+, so we're kind of like right there. Like, I think I would draft it a little higher than you would, but you're definitely not sad to play this card.
Yeah.
Limited Resources rated this card as a C. Which I thought they were like, again, they're going to play this card, but they're like, it's just kind of a average card. It's not
fine,
like remarkable. Card. Yeah. I was like, whoa, that surprises me with having the Death Touch mechanic built into the card.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that it's hard to trigger on defense does take away.
It does. It's like, more of an attack card.
Yeah, I mean, Fang of Shigeki and what was it? Venomous Scorpion. I can't remember the name of it from.
Yeah.
Those were good because they're cheap death touchers that you can block with.
Sure.
And this is harder to do.
Mm-hmm.
Although they did point out there is major blowout potential with this card. There's a couple of like cheapish instant spells that make multiple creature tokens.
Mm-hmm.
So there's exotic pets. And there's also one of the charms makes multiple creature tokens.
Mm-hmm.
At which point you just like boom 2 1/1 death touch tokens in addition to whatever else I've got laying around, and you can just vaporize your opponent straight up with that.
Yeah. So
there's major upside.
Sure, absolutely.
But yeah, I think this is a very solid card.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
I think Warm Welcome is dog shit, though.
I don't like it either.
So this is 2 and a green, an instant, Warm Welcome. Look at the top 5 cards of your library, reveal a creature from among them, put it into your hand, put the rest on bottom in a random order, and make a 1/1 citizen creature token. So, we both gave it a D or F. They gave it a C+, which, puke.
Why?
I'm baffled by this. They hate tutor effects.
Sure.
Not every set, but a lot of sets have some kind of tutor, either at uncommon or rare. There actually is an uncommon black tutor in this set that you can casualty to double up on, which they appropriately gave a D or F.
Sure.
And their point is, it's not worth a card, your mana, and a turn to go get another card.
Yeah.
Generally speaking.
That's fair.
The exception being, a 1 mana spell that will get you a land, or, something like that.
Right.
Or a ramp spell that will actually put a land into play. That's different. But just trading a card and mana in your hand for a different card in your library, you're going to get outpaced. And this seems like a really bad version of that, because you will miss with this card sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
3 mana, look at the top 5, and reveal a creature. I don't know what the percent is, but you will miss sometimes with this card. And when you do, you will basically lose the game.
Yeah, this is a creature-focused set, but that being said, I mean, there's obviously lands and everything else in your hand, or in your library. So, yeah, chances of missing are higher than you think.
Even if if this is 80% to hit, it's still like, 1 of 5 times this just is 3 mana, make a 1/1.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh, God.
Yeah.
And when it does hit, I would just rather this be a good creature.
Yep, I agree.
So this blew my mind. I have no idea what they were thinking on this one.
No, I don't like that one either.
All right, well, we're in agreement. All right, we're rounding it out here, and we can go to artifacts and lands.
Okay.
This one's just funny. This is not. I don't have a big note on this one, but it's Arc Spitter.
Yeah.
Although it was tough to grade, I had a hard time grading this one.
I did too.
This was 1 colorless for an artifact equipment, 1 to equip. So nice start.
Mm-hmm.
Equip creature has pay 1. This creature deals 1 damage to target creature that's blocking it.
Yeah.
So I want to go through the whole journey here. You gave it a B. I gave it a D or F. They gave it a D or F.
Yep.
Marshall came out hot on it like you did as well.
Yeah.
And also is like, wow, this is like major threat of activation. Like, you equip this thing, attack, it's like, bring it on.
Yep.
I'll kill whatever you block with.
Yeah.
LSV had a really great way of framing what this card actually does. He says, what would you give an equipment that was 1 to play, 1 to equip, and just gave this creature is unblockable?
Sure.
And Marshall's like, maybe a C? And he's like, okay, now what would you give it if they could still block it if they really wanted to?
Yeah.
And that's basically what this card is.
That's fair.
They're not gonna block it with things they don't want to lose unless they really need to.
Right.
In which case they still can. So I think that's why it hits D or F, is that, this will push through damage at the cost of a card, but they can still block if they have to.
Yeah. I truly did not know whether to make this a B or a D or an F. I actually debated on that too. I was... Why does LSV have to be smart sometimes?
Yeah.
Like, I could have accepted my B and just this is a big win. Like, truly, this was one of those where it was going to be an all or nothing. Mm-hmm. Maybe I could have taken the average and did a C plus or whatever, and be unhappy with I could have just made it whichever one. But
no, I like going for it.
Yeah, I went for it this time. I just for the one that I flipped correctly on earlier in the show, I just flipped incorrectly on this one. So, it's such a good point. It is one of those where it's kind of makes it unblockable. But it also it just discourages, what's the best way to put it? It can manipulate how blockers are chosen at that point. And I think that has something can be said for that. Now, again, I could have gone either way with this one. I understand why it's a D or an F. I could have easily been swayed on why this is a B. So,
I mean, I could too.
Huge range.
Even as they were talking about it, they started talking, I was like, fuck, I knew it was too good.
Yeah.
And then LSV is like, I was like, okay. Whew.
Yeah. Nope, I could have gone either way with this one.
And then my other comment is not for a particular card, really. It's just the artifacts in general. Remember last time with Kamigawa and the artifacts, the colorless artifacts specifically came up, and I was like, oh, man, thank God, finally, they found a way to make them playable and decent, and they fit into things maybe this is how it's going to be going forward.
To dream.
It was but a brief respite before we go back into over half of the colorless artifacts being Ds or Fs.
Yeah.
And the rest of them they gave C minuses to, basically, with one exception.
Yeah.
So, again, the colorless artifacts are just kind of doo-doo.
Yeah, they really are. They're standard artifacts that we've known.
We've come to know and hate.
Yeah.
And then last comment for me is just on the lands. Like we said, there are 2 cycles of lands that will help fix your mana. And I went ahead and took a stab and said, normally these are Cs.
Yep.
Standard.
And that's my standard
LR.
I always answer to.
I generally do, and I just took a stab they're going to be a little bit more important this time, so
Sure.
I bumped it to C+, and that's exactly what they did. Yep. So I was like,
good
if
call.
I'm lucky, I just got 10 points, and I did.
Yep, good call.
Whew.
Good call.
Was it enough?
I'd say so. I think citizens are really going to bite me on this one, because I think that LR is much higher on them, and you are too, than I am. So I think that, in addition to these lands, I think that's going to make the difference. But we'll see.
We will see. Regardless, I'll be curious to see how citizens actually turn out. I'm not convinced that they will be
I'm curious
everything they're cracked up to be.
I'm going to hold my breath on those.
We'll find out. All right, well, speaking of finding out, let's find out who won today's game.
Okay.
So, end of the round. Seth 296, Kenny 240.
Hey! Oh man, one very close this time.
Big victory.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's exactly what you said. It was basically those 2 things.
Yeah.
Citizens across the board I was higher on, and those lands gave a big chunk as well at the end.
Yep. Very good. Well, congratulations.
Well, thank you.
This is a tough set to grade.
I fully agree. It was a wild ride listening to it. Like I said, I went in thinking man, this set is just OP. Everything's so strong. And I came out not really. There's a couple cards in there, really big outliers with the white and the green common that are just so insane.
I know, and those are citizen colors, and that's why I'm just
they might be enough to just push it. The thing is,
well,
everyone will play those cards.
Yeah.
it's not like the citizen deck gets to free roll them, you know?
Right. And it's like, like in Kamigawa, it's like you could build blue-white good stuff and have more success than like an actual vehicles deck, which is what they were originally trying to go for. So it could just be like green-white good stuff, and then that's good enough, and like green-white X or something like that. So we'll see.
Definitely.
It's interesting. I don't know. I don't know what this one's going to end up. And that's exciting in itself. Like I'm very glad for that. It's not like, like you knew like ninjas are going to be good. You knew, you thought like green red was going to be pushed and like red white was going to be pushed. Like you knew like where it was going to be, and like you have the factions here. Stuff intermingles so much here because you have like many like 3 color spells that are like 3 different colors and only 5 total colors to work with. There's going to be a lot of like intermingling that's going to be happening here. So I don't know where this is going to go, which is exciting and frustrating at the same time. So
I mean, that's why we like this game too.
It is
exploring these things.
It is. I'm very much looking forward to exploring and just seeing what works, what doesn't. Yeah, it'll be fun.
Definitely. I want to see which of these factions are actually good.
Do you have any inkling on which faction you're leaning towards at this point?
I think I will stake my claim with you, and I think the Bant faction is good.
I just think it's just generally good, yeah.
I think shield tokens are just super nice.
Yeah.
I think the Grixis faction is good. It's good in general, and then you can build one that has a sacrifice package, and that will be crazy good, I think.
Yeah, I think that would be really good.
Anything that touches blue will be good, because I think Connive is just so strong.
Connive is strong. And I think there's definitely going to be cards that like you draft them and you're like, okay, I have to include this, so I kind of have to build around it a little bit more, or at least splash it or something like that. So, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. I'm not sure where this is going to go, but that is part of the fun, figuring it out.
I look forward to exploring the format with you.
Me too. Yeah, I'm definitely going to be in on this one.
Hell yeah. All right, well, thanks for joining me today, and thank you, listener, for joining us for another Filthy Casuals review. We'll see you in the next set.
Bye-bye.